All right. Hey, folks. Apologies. I was just trying to make sure my sound was right before we got on here. Okay. But I know you guys will let me know in the chat if my sound is not working right. But I believe it should be good, right? I was fighting with it for a little bit. Anyway, happy Wednesday. Few things to cover. This I don't feel like we have a lot of super heavy stuff, but we still got a lot of stuff to kind of talk about. So that's always good. I just want to say a few quick hellos, and then we're gonna kind of jump right into everything. What up, Avocado Queen? Said she wasn't expecting a live tonight, but just so happens I'm on the East Coast. Perfect timing. Yeah, I didn't put an announcement out for this live either. I kind of just posted it and was like, I'll be on in like the next hour and a half, so come join me. What up, Alan? What up, Ethereal Vortex? Said I've never caught a live. Well, welcome to the party. Hey Calvin, your resident baby boomer is gonna catch a live tonight. Yes, we are here. What up, Free Spirit 148? Galleria, Aloha crew. You're all okay. Come on, all the way from Hawaii. I forgot what the time difference is between Hawaii and the East Coast. I want to say, is it 8 hours? I don't remember. You'd have to correct me. What time is it in Hawaii? Right. Well, the section of Hawaii that you're in. I don't know how far out or which island. What up, Nan Nelson? Maverick Gouda. Hello. Tina McCants. Come on, hello from DC. Down the street, neighbor. We in DC. K Inspired, what's up? All right, I want to go ahead and kind of get this started. What up, Nelton? I got your video. I haven't watched it yet, though. Let's see. Piano Kid, Xylan Artist. What up, Jersey? Okay. So a few things for the book club, because our next session will be Monday, I believe, July 13th. The books club selections will be posted on my community tab on Friday for you guys to vote on. You know, like we normally do. I give you the catalog of different books that I'm recommending we use, and you guys get to pick or vote on specifically the book that you guys want, and then that's what we'll pick up on the 13th. So we'll do the voting from that Friday through about Tuesday. I'll announce on Wednesday what the selection is, and then I'll also give the assignment, and so you guys have until about July 13th to do the reading. And normally I only assign, it depends on the book. So I try to do like 1 to 3 or 4 chapters, or sometimes I'll do it based on pages, because, you know, some books, 3 chapters, like when we did The Color of Money, you know, 3 chapters was like 190 pages, versus if we did something like the Phyllis Hyman book, 3 chapters might be 50. So it just depends. So like I said, the book club picks back up on July 13th, and I will have the book club selections for you all to vote on this Friday. All right. Outside of that, life is good on my end. I've just been doing a little bit of traveling. Juneteenth, happy Juneteenth to everybody. Mine was pretty good. You know, DC, to me, I love being in DC because there's so much to do. But I just really enjoyed seeing what all the different cities and what all the different regions were doing. And I really love the fact that with everything that's happening, we still find these moments in these spaces where we can still find our joy and enjoy ourselves. And I'll say my favorite aspect of the past weekend was I went to Afram on Sunday. I didn't get to go the Friday or the Saturday, but I went on the very last day. For those who don't know, Afram is this wonderful festival that has been going. This was their 50th year. Big African-American festival of music, food, culture, and everything. It takes place in Baltimore every year around June, and it's free, right? Baltimore, I will definitely give kudos to, because they have so many free events. Like Artscape is always free. That's normally in May, even though it got rained out this year. So we literally pulled up and it was raining sideways and we pulled right off. But, you know, Artscape is free. Afram is free. And what's really dope about Afram is that they normally have a really good lineup too. Even for it to be free, you're definitely getting your non-money's worth, if that makes any sense. This year, at least for the Sunday show, it was PJ Morton, it was Drew Hill, it was Tamia and Charlie Wilson. I've never seen Charlie Wilson live, so I was really happy that I got a chance to catch him. But I mean, it was a good time. The music was great. Drew Hill was fun to watch. I was about to say I've never seen Drew Hill live, but that's not true. They were at Air Nightclub New Year's Eve going into 2025. And that's when I realized that millennials were getting old, because I was like, wait, I feel like I'm at the old people party. Because we were in there turned for some Drew Hill. And I'm like, wait, oh no, I'm turning into my uncles. Right? So yeah, Drew Hill, they were good, of course. You know, they do their singing. You know, they like to hoot and holler. You know, I like a nice hoot and holler every now and then. I know y'all know my favorite artist is not really a hoot and hollerer, but please understand, when I want to hear like the singing, I like some hooting and hollering, right? So they were doing that. Of course, to me, it was really good. I saw Tamia 2 years ago when she was on tour with Joe. She was phenomenal at that show. Now this show, she pulled it back a little bit. I will also say it was hot. So to me, it was like, I'm going to give you guys the free concert. So I'm going to sound beautiful because she has one of the prettiest tones out there. But to me, it was like, I'm not hitting too many big notes tonight, or this, you're not getting all that. So you want all that, you got to buy a ticket. So she still did her set. It was a good time. She sounds amazing. Like Tamia, I've never heard hit a bad note. And I suggest you go and see her in concert, because I'm telling you, when I went to that show, it was, the joint tour with her and Joe. To me, it was marketed as Joe being the headliner. But to be honest, and mind you, Joe's one of my favorite male vocalists, along with Kevon Edmonds and Phil Perry and Tevin Campbell. But that was Tamia's concert. Tamia was pulling notes out of, I don't even know where these notes were coming from. Like notes that she wasn't even hitting on the albums, and sustaining them and just holding them. And she just kept going. It's something about certain sopranos where it's like, for sopranos, it's easy to sing high, and they just can just sit up there and just go for it. I'm like, my God, amazing talent. She should have been bigger. And then of course, Charlie Wilson, I was really excited to see. One of my favorite songs is from the Gap Band, Yearning for Your Love. And I also appreciated his contributions with everything he did with Zapp and Roger, like Computer Love and I Want to Be Your Man. I had no idea that he had 5 strokes in the last year. Had no idea. So it's amazing that he's still able to perform, and he still sounds really good. And what I like is that he knows how to still give a show, even though physically he had to kind of sit and stay at the piano and not do too much moving around, because he's still, learning to walk again and everything like that. He still made sure you got a show. I mean, it's the dancers coming across the stage. One of the dancers had these wings and stuff when they were starting to do, because he started doing something, had wings, they were flying, and then dance, and then the background singers had like these bright neon colors. Visually, it was a lot going on, but it was a lot. So Charlie was rocking the place, and I was just, when I say I was happy I got to see him, because I've never seen Charlie. And Charlie has a bunch of gems, whether it's his solo stuff or the stuff with the Gap Band. And so kudos to Charlie. And so, yeah, Afram was just, it was a good time. Everybody was in a good mood. There wasn't no drama or nothing. And shout out to the people that knew me from YouTube. Niall, I know we didn't get to run into each other, but we sent the nice IG message. Justice, who was sitting right behind me the whole time. I was on the hill with my friends sitting on we made this little tarp to kind of sit on. And then Joy, who, I think Joy caught me when I was rushing trying to find something to drink, so I was thirsty. But so shout out to you all. But no, I always have a really, really good time at Afram. Anytime I go to anything in Baltimore, it's always a good time. And so that's kind of the theme for at least tonight with me. Like, we're always talking about, again, community and discernment, but I'm going to add the third element, joy, right? We need it in order to kind of keep your head in the game, and with everything that's happening and with so many uphill battles that we're currently facing. And sometimes there's periods of uncertainty. You still got to balance it out sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, you still got to find ways to be ready and equipped to duke it up with the worst and the best of them, but also have that balance, so we're just not sitting on rage all day and hurt, and because that's how you die young, right? We're trying to live long, and not only live long, but live long and be healthy and be able-bodied and able to do everything and play with your grandkids and chase your dog and go hiking if you want to, right? You want to be able to live, and your blood pressure is not so high that you got to take a break every 2 minutes because you're stressed. One wrong sneeze and it's over, right? And so trying to just make sure that you find those things that give you a lot of euphoria. Now, for me, it's traveling and catching up with friends. So like I said, when the spring and the summer hit, which are my favorite times of the year, which we are now in, I am outside, okay? I'm not home. I'm outside traveling. But I enjoy going back to Juneteenth, just seeing all the celebrations, seeing like what was happening with Harlem, what was happening in Houston, seeing all the different clips of just people in all these different cities and different regions just celebrating and coming together, and food and joy and laughter. And even though there's a lot of people who really had never even heard of Juneteenth until it became a federal holiday, just the education that is coming and people being willing to teach and share what it's all about and everything like that. Which leads me to the next portion. Oh, by the way, I will say the one funny part about Afram, and this is why I say joy comes into the picture. Because we were sitting on a hill, like, just pretend I am the stage, right? We were on a hill on the side, so it's like we're on the side, and you gotta have to like kind of look to the stage. But anyway, so there was a woman that was sitting behind us, and she had her chair turned toward the stage, which means that she's kind of sitting at a slant because we're on a hill. We had a great night. We've been singing, we've been dancing. Of course, you know, black folks talk to everybody who's sitting around them, especially in like music concerts. You just laughing and joking. Anyway, it's been a good night. Charlie's on. We're towards the end of the night. Now, mind you, they also, you know, you can get your liquor and stuff because they got food vendors and stuff. So people didn't have the cognacs and Moscatos and whatever else. I don't know. I just know the lady got up. She was feeling Charlie because you dropped a bomb on me. Whatever. She was feeling good. And when she tried to sit back down, I couldn't see anything because my back is turned. Like she's behind me. So I'm just kind of sitting and bopping. And all I hear is, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I turn to look, and it's already too late. That woman is rolling down and rolls right into me, drink in her hand. The liquor splashed all on my shoulder. Fortunately, like I said, we're in a good mood. I'm not going to be mad. I had like a similar shirt like this on anyway, so it's just something you can throw in and watch. But it was kind of funny. And, you know, we're all trying to help her get back in the seat, and she was good. I'm like, great, because that was my next worry. Like, please don't be hurt, because, Lord, if they got to bring an ambulance out here, and we the reason the concert gets messed up. But, no, it was a really good time. I always love hanging in Baltimore. Baltimore folks, y'all, I rock with y'all. All right. Before I get into the next part, I do want to quickly just put some reminders in there about these primaries. Again, I'm not going to shut up about the primaries until we're done with the primaries. And then when the primaries are done, then it's to the general elections. So again, for those who may be unfamiliar, or this may be your first time here, the way the primaries work, within this current two-party system that we have, before you get to the general election, you have your primary. Sometimes you have your caucus, whatever, either or. And your primaries are pretty much saying, if, I don't know, let's say there's the Calvin Michaels party, right? If there's a Calvin Michaels party and there's 10 people from my channel that all want to run to represent the Calvin Michaels party. So Avocado Queen is going to run. Alan is going to run. Julian is going to run. Xylem Artist is going to run. All these different people are going to run. Only one person can run to be the Calvin Michaels nominee who's going to run against Calvin Jones. Let's just say there's another random person, right? And the two of us are both running to become whatever. So how that works is during that primary, all of you are going to vote for who out of those 10 are going to represent the Calvin Michaels party. And then that winner is the winner of that primary, and they go on into the general election. So that's kind of what's happening in all of the different states. Right now, you have your Democratic and you have your Republican primaries that are taking place where people are voting on who will be the Democratic or the Republican nominee for Senate or governor. Sometimes it may be a mayoral race, like DC just had theirs the other day. And that's what that's all about. So as some reminders, some that are coming up. In June, there's only one that is left, which is Colorado. So that is June 30th. And for Colorado, you guys are having a primary for a Senate seat and 8 House seats, right? The next primary is going to be Arizona. That is July 21st. You don't have any Senate seats up for primary, but you do have 9 House seats. Remember, the House, right, that 435, even if you're not in a state that elects whatever, even those representatives still play a role into how your livelihood goes, because when everything goes to the House and the Senate to be voted on, these are the representatives from those different states. So even if there's an election in Maine and you don't live there, if it's about the House or it's about the Senate, it still will affect you whether you're there or not. All right. And then we get to August, the important month, because that's when my birthday is. Guam and U.S. Virgin Islands, you both have your primaries on August 1st. Very, very great day. Very great day for those who know. Now that's for your delegate. Now we know because Guam and the U.S. Virgin Islands are U.S. territories and not states, they have somewhat of a different experience when it comes to voting as far as like their representation. The same thing like that D.C. deals with as well. So D.C. has, when they just had theirs, it was for the delegate, right? That will still sit in the House, right? All right. With that being said, then you have August 4th, right? We have Kansas. Kansas, you have a Senate primary and you have 4 House seats that are up for grabs. Michigan, you also have, and this will also be on August 4th, you have a Senate seat that's being primaried and you have 13 House seats. Missouri, no Senate primary, but you have 8 House seats up for grabs. Virginia, 1 Senate seat and 11 House seats for grab. All right, that's August 4th. Kansas, Michigan, Missouri, Virginia, August 4th. August 1st, Guam, U.S. Virgin Islands. June 30th, Colorado, Arizona, July 21st. Then August 6th, Tennessee. All right, you have a Senate seat being primaried, and you have 9 seats up in the House. August 8th, Hawaii, to my wonderful subscriber up at the top. August 8th, you guys have 2 House seats. And then again, when we get to August 11th, we have Connecticut, no Senate seats, but you do have 5 seats in the House that are up for grabs with the primary. Minnesota, 1 Senate seat, 8 House seats. Vermont, 1 House seat. Wisconsin, 8 House seats. That's for August 11th. And then the last date I'm going to pull, because we'll get to September when we get closer to it. Alaska, August 18th, 1 Senate seat, 1 House seat. Florida, Senate seat, 28. 28 House seats are up, right, with the primaries. Again, Florida, 28. I need y'all to act like y'all got some sense over there. And Wyoming, 1 Senate seat, 1 House seat. All right. Now, again, I know there's going to be those who are like, I don't want to hear all about this vote and blah, 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 blah. Listen, like I said, and I keep saying it to the same people who keep making these same comments. I keep asking y'all for solutions. Y'all still ain't gave me one. The solution y'all keep giving me is sit out so you can teach the party a lesson. We don't have time to sit on the ideas of teaching a party a lesson. We're living through the nonsense right now. So what can you actively do? So for those who want to just sit and complain about what's not going to work, give me a solution. Don't just sit here and kill our joy. If you don't want to vote, fine. Don't come to my platform get mad at me for telling everybody else to stay active, right? Especially when things affect all of us. So that being said, lock in with those primaries. And yeah, and again, voting is not the end all be all. Voting is not going to give us our liberation. Voting is not going to be the revolutionary act that fixes all of it, but it is a start. It just means that you still have a piece in the game to challenge and fix things. And like I said before, I said this on the last live, if you have an issue with what's happening in one party or the other party or both parties, or you think they're both trash, like I said before, all it takes is 2 election cycles to flush out every single person that's currently elected right now. 2 election cycles, right? That's it. So if you can get the numbers and people to show up and push the right kind of people that you want in power, or push out the people that aren't doing their job, or push out the people that you think are corrupted or bought out, or, you know, they ran on one thing and they did the opposite, it's only 2 election cycles that will push every single person out of a party. That's how you can shift the party that quickly. So again, all of this actually does matter. Now, the thing I did want to come back to, because as we were celebrating the Juneteenth and celebrating all of these moments, I just noticed that there's so many people who are pressed about what we're doing. You ever see that? You might see a clip of, I don't know, maybe they're doing a line dance in Chicago at some community event, and it's Black folks having a good time. And you always see that same population of people show up to either hate or troll or do something to just get, for some reason, we just get under everybody's skin. Same thing with Juneteenth. The amount of white folks that I saw complaining because they had a day off, right? Mad because Juneteenth is the thing. The amount of posts that I kept seeing, well, what is this? This isn't a real holiday. And I guarantee you, if they had the day off, they were taking that day off. I just want us to remember that, again, when it comes to where we're at, folks can't stand to see us thrive. They can't stand to see us having a good time. They can't stand to see us doing anything if it's not subservient to them, right? And for some reason, I just want us to remember to not always give our energy to them, right? Because sometimes I'll see folks like going back and forth and arguing, and I'm like, listen, a lot of these folks know exactly what's going on or understand what's going on. They don't want to understand, or they want to be obtuse, or they want to hold on to a status quo that gives them some sense of feeling that they're superior. And so let us not always give all of our energy to them. Now, you know, I love to clear somebody quick. I love to drag somebody and keep it moving. But we don't have to spend our days waking up worried about what somebody else thinks about us, or what somebody else has a vengeance about us with, unless you got to deal with policy, right? And so my thing is, again, we're not letting folks take our joy. We're not letting folks stop us from having a good time. Like I saw a clip where there was like a Juneteenth celebration, and then there's the guy on the bike who pulls up with the Confederate flag because he wants a reaction out of us so bad, and we won't give it to him, right? They continue to do it, and it's just interesting. It goes back to what I was saying with the title. A lot of folks are just pressed about us because we're interesting, we're fun, we're talented, we're exciting, we're everything. And I think some people who want to live with the delusion of thinking they're superior to us actually have that inferiority complex. And so when they see us thriving, even after all that has happened, even after all of the racist policy, everything that has been kind of just done to target us, and we can still find that balance where, yes, we can take care of what needs to be taken care of, but we can still live our lives and come together and break bread, or connect over music or movies, or laugh, or just the fact that we have a way of communicating where we don't even have to state the obvious and things are just collectively understood within our collective. People envy that, right? People it bothers them. And for me, I'm like, okay, Well, you stay bothered because we good over here. And so just remember, that's all I'm saying. Let's not give all of our energy to the folks that constantly have it out for us. Because you notice we don't wake up thinking about everybody else and their stuff, right? We wake up taking care of our own or whatever's important. But it's just interesting. Like you just see, no matter what we do, whether good, bad, exhilarating, extraordinary, or terrible, they're still on our case either way. So that's all I'm saying. And it's interesting because the one thing is, you know, like I said, if they see us having a good time, if they see the joy, they got a problem with it. Now they want to agitate. They want to find a reason to mess up something. Like you see a wonderful news article or something about something great that happened in the community, and you go to the comment section and you already know what's going to be there waiting, right? When it comes to our agency, they'll sit here and tell us to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps or blah blah blah, and we'll do it, right? We'll have the Fearless Fund. We'll have all these different programs and stuff that we build within our community to help our community. Then they get mad. Now all of a sudden it's reverse discrimination or it's reverse racism or do whatever. And really, when they're talking about the idea of pulling yourself up by the bootstrap, they don't really want you to do it. They pretty much want anything that you've been able to acquire or build or gain. They want to have a hand in it. That's the reality. They want to have some kind of credit for it. It goes back to what I keep saying about like my Stevie Wonder theory, where people got mad when Stevie Wonder started speaking out about police brutality. And then a lot of folks in white America were like, after all we've done for you. And I'm like, hold on. Hey, now, Stevie was blind, taught himself to play music, can sing, can play the drums, can play the xylophone, can play the harmonica, can play the harp, can play all these instruments, got signed when he was like 11 years old to a black record label, and then built an audience with, literally at the Apollo at one of the Motor Town review shows, right? And then that's how we ended up getting fingertips and everything. Like he built his entire audience off the backs and support of Black America. And later down the line, by the time we get to about 74, 75, 76, that's when he finally crosses over to white audiences, because Black folks have been with him since day one. But the idea of thinking that the success of Stevie Wonder is through the lens and the mercy of white America baffles me. The audacity, right? The fact that Stevie Wonder can't even see, but can see that there's a problem with race in this country and folks got mad about it. Be for real. So again, when it comes to that idea of agency, there's so many who want to have this thing where anything that we gain or build, they got to have their name on it somehow. They got to make it seem like there's just no way we could have done it on our own, which is why when we do utilize our agency and we do build within our own, they're already finding every other way to come and take it apart or dismantle it. And then you get the Edward Blooms and you get all these different random groups that sue for different things. I always said, I think one of the main reasons why they spent so much time really attacking education, especially when it comes to like affirmative action, was once that stat started coming out about Black women being the most educated in the country, folks were like, all right, they've been given too much. And mind you, it wasn't given, it was earned. But still, we got to do something about it. And then here comes the anti-affirmative action stuff. And here comes the executive orders. And then fast forward some years, and then you get DOGE, and you get some new executive orders and anti-DEI and all this other stuff. Just know everybody's pressed about us. And then, so again, they see us having our joy or doing whatever, they feel some kind of way about it. They see us use our agency, they feel some kind of way about it. To the point where the next thing is always our livelihood. Even when we make a way for ourselves, they got to find a way to come and interrupt that too, right? Think about the freeway system and how you had all these thriving Black neighborhoods that were starting to, expand and do their own thing. And what happened when we started building that interstate freeway system? Well, got to find a portion of the city that it can just drive straight through, right? We've already done the video on it, but when we talk about the origins of the Liberty City riots of 1981, you have to talk about also what happened in that entire area when it came to the freeway system being built and how there was an entire segment of Overton that was destroyed, right? A thriving Black portion that had businesses and everything destroyed so you could put the interstate freeway system there. And then you talk about the later residuals of what would happen and what ended up becoming Liberty City and how the city was all so segregated because of redlining and everything else in the ordinances, right? There's just story after story after story. And so the point that I'm getting at is even when it comes to our livelihood, they're willing to throw away their livelihood if it means that it will negatively affect us to some extent. And so the point is they're going to be pressed about us either way. So live your best life. Go for whatever it is that you are aiming to go for and do it well. And do it not because you're trying to impress them, but do it because you're doing it for yourself and for your collective, for your community, right? And utilize that discernment while you do it. Because I think for that collective, what they know is that without enforcement and imperialism and oppression, they know that they're substandard and that drives them crazy. That's why they're so pressed about us and everything, right? When your whole identity is built on the delusion of being superior to somebody else, you have to do everything in your power to maintain that. So you become more and more vile, because what ends up happening is people become desensitized and immune to your foolery and find ways around it. So you have to start to become even more extreme with the way that you try to enforce what it is that you believe in order to hold on to the idea and the delusion of being superior. That's what we're living in right now. This is the delusionment era of white America, where they have just lost their minds. And so anything goes. It's the funniest thing. It's not even just about Trump, because he's going to lie and say all his weird stuff all day anyway. That's just a given. But the things that we've watched white America allow, all in the name of holding on to this delusion that they want to stay under. Right? That's the wildest part. And so, again, when they see you living your best life, they're pressed. And even when they're living their best life, we're still on their radar. Think back to, what's his name? Josh Hawkins. I didn't get to talk about it because it's old news now. But when they had the whole UFC thing at the White House lawn, y'all are having y'all America 250 happy birthday Trump party. Somehow Michelle Obama's on y'all radar. Now y'all go call Michelle Obama a man. Michelle is minding her business. Right? Michelle is over with her husband and her lovely daughters and the dog and everything else, minding their business. And somehow she's on the mind of a UFC fighter who just had a match in DC on the White House lawn, which they have destroyed. Somehow Michelle is on y'all radar. And the reality is they know that the whole she's a man thing is some BS. But again, the idea of being delusional, to feel empowered. And what makes it entertaining is most of us, like, I feel like Black people collectively are just like, we see y'all, we'll give our energy to the things that we want to give our energy to, but we're not going to give it to every single thing that you throw out there, right? I think that's where a lot of us are right now. But they haven't figured that out yet. So they think things like this bother us, right? In the same way that they will throw George Floyd out there every single 5 minutes and try to weaponize it when they need to do something like very terrible to try to get under our skin. We already know how y'all move. Y'all only got like 4 tricks in the playbook. You use the same 4. Right? The only thing that makes it work in your favor is that you just have power in number. That's about it, to be honest, right? And so again, what's even crazy? Even the bots. I always find it funny. Even the bots are racist. You ever notice that? Because at this point, on a lot of platforms like Twitter and starting even Threads, unfortunately, is getting there. Facebook, not really YouTube, but a lot of these platforms where people can have open-ended discussions and comments. A lot of these platforms at this point are more than 50% bots, especially on something like a Twitter or an X. Most of the time, people who are sitting here arguing with somebody on like something like Twitter, they're not even arguing with a person. They're arguing with a bot. And it's so funny that even the bots have all been programmed to be racist, right? You go to any random post about something with Black folks, and you can guarantee there's going to be some bots in there talking about, whatever, blue Democrat city run, trash bin, Black this, drug this, crack that, something, Michelle's still a man, like all and they're not even real people. You know how down bad and pressed you got to be to spend your time programming devices to be racist? These are not a computer. Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to get on my soapbox. Anyway, let me start with one happy thing before I get into everything else. If I can find, did I even post that video? Did I share it? Maybe not. I don't know what I did with it. Did I? I don't think I had it on here. Okay, I'll leave it alone. I'll come back to it. Somebody remind me at the. Oh no, here it goes. Just kidding. All right, let's open with this one first. Let me set this up as I be a millennial and narrate exactly what I'm doing. All right, y'all should be able to see. Yes. All right. Let's get some sound here.
Emotional day as a 23-year-old New Orleans man brings in a new future at Manning Family Children's Hospital.
23-year-old Daniel Cressy became the first person in Louisiana to be fully cured of sickle cell disease through gene therapy. That means the disease is no longer active in his system. Cressy says that his dream of becoming a pilot was almost taken away from him because of this blood disorder. He says it was tough, a 2-year journey under this procedure, and he wants to pay that forward with his own nonprofit to help other people going through sickle cell treatment.
This entire journey was the hardest thing I've done in my life. And the reason I work so hard with our organization, Privileged Pilots, is because I don't want anybody else to have to experience the loneliness and the uncertainty and the hopelessness that I felt a couple of years ago.
Someone's ability to access treatment and potentially cure should not be defined by their zip code. People in Louisiana deserve the same opportunity as people anywhere else in this country. The people living with sickle cell disease are here. They are our neighbors, our friends, our families.
Doctors say the therapy uses a patient's very own stem cells that have been edited in a lab so they no longer produce the defective cells that cause the disease. We're told around 3,000 people in Louisiana have sickle cell disease. That is the highest rate per capita in this country.
Okay. You know what's wild? I'm going to say about 6 years ago, we did, and I want to say this is when I was still doing a lot more in the news episodes. We did the story about the gene therapy with stem cell research and what was happening with sickle cell. So it's kind of cool to fast forward some years later, and now we're seeing the end result, right? Really, really cool. And again, because sickle cell is something that disproportionately affects us collectively, I think, again, any step is progress, especially in this era where we're in the era of anti-intellectualism, where people think they know more than the scientists and the doctors. On top of the fact that you now have a federal government that is anti-science, anti-health, and they literally stripped funding or federal funding of sickle cell research. So yeah, we'll see how this continues to align and how this will affect other people later down the line. I want to pause for a second and read some comments, and then we're going to get into some politics here. All right. So let's see here. Again, if I miss your comment, it's not that I'm not choosing. I literally just kind of scroll and just stop right here and then start reading. So I will let you know when I'm at the bottom of the chat if you're trying to get me in real time. All right. Miss River 1984 said, "Hey Calvin, I'm still disgusted at certain Oklahomans for not voting to raise minimum wage to $15 last week." Yeah, that's the only downside with elections, is that because even I was looking at Maryland District 5's results from last night. I'm like, that wasn't the choice, y'all. That wasn't who we were supposed to vote for over there. But that all I can say to that is you just keep going, right? Sometimes it takes sometimes it takes more than a few rounds and tries before you get what you actually want, unfortunately. And this is why I think education is so important, especially now. And when I say education, not just for the adults, but even with the youth and understanding civics and teaching that. I think I was given a pretty decent understanding of civics in elementary, middle, and high school. Just enough for me to care, to the point where I get my own, insight and my own initiative to want to go and research more. I don't really know if things are still the same. There's so many who they're so far out of the loop, and it's not because of ignorance. It's not because, they don't know. It's like, I just think right now you got a lot of people who they're overwhelmed with life. There's so many things going on. So for a lot of folks, some folks the dots just don't want to connect. They don't want to take the time to go and look into this or understand that or so on and so forth, just because of everything that's happening, which drives me crazy. And I'm trying to learn to be like, you know what? You just got to meet people where they are and keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. But it does get frustrating when you're fighting or clawing to try to get something that benefits everybody and it keeps falling through. And especially when it falls through because of just lack of understanding. And it's the same thing even with some of these primaries, where, there's probably some candidates that probably should have dropped out so that other folks would have an opportunity if they knew like there was no chance that they were going to get there. Because I keep looking at that Maryland District 5, right? And I think there were like 20 candidates. And so there was the candidate that won, but technically based on the voting pattern of that district, they actually voted against the person that won. But there were so many people in the primary that they all split the vote. So, it comes with a territory. Amelia Girl said, "Hey, from Bowie, Maryland, from Northwest DC, born and raised." All right, come on, DC. I'm not born and raised, but at this point, I've lived in DC longer than my childhood time. This is year 20 for DC for me. Like, I only lived in Washington State for 14 years. 14 years in Washington State, 3 years in Vicenza, Italy, a year in Savannah, and then a few weeks and months, sprinkling in a few other places. But yeah, DC is home for me. I said Leo Squad, yes. I said there are so many people in Maryland who didn't know about early voting until I reminded them. Another thing that I think people have to think about, a lot of people don't have cable and TV anymore, right? A lot of people just only stream. And so that overabundance of you being bombarded with all these political ads, a lot of people aren't seeing them. Like I have YouTube TV. I never watch it. I don't know why I'm still paying that $90. And I think what it is, it's an ego thing where I just want to know that if I want to watch it, I can. But I never watch TV at this point, minus like a few streaming shows. And so I'm not seeing a lot of commercials anymore. If I see commercials, it's because I'm on YouTube, right? And there's an ad or something that pops up. So a lot of people had no idea that, like for Maryland or some of the, or even New York, some people had no idea that they had a primary yesterday. Now, if you were watching this channel, I gave everybody a 4 weeks heads up. But yeah, so I think it's harder sometimes to get the information out there. Canvassing is one piece, but everybody's not trying to canvass. Not everybody wants to knock on people's doors. It's just, we're in a weird time. It's so interesting that with such a detrimental setup that we're in right now, as far as your own government pretty much actively working against you, the lack of enthusiasm to try to combat and change all this, just, it baffles me, right? It is what it is, though. Let's see what else we got going. Somebody said psychotic energy vampires. Breon, yep. All right. Yeah. Yes, they are obsessed. I agree. Hey Calvin, everybody, can we please talk about Whitney Houston and Oprah? I'm gonna get to that. I did write. I wrote some notes for it, so we'll get to Nikki. Let's see. Order of the Bees. Take a shot every time Edward Bloom is mentioned. Yo, okay. Can we do? I think I'm gonna save that for a Zoom party. I'm actually up for something like that, but I wouldn't want to get like twisted on the live, right? I got to do that Zoom party with people who really, people I feel safe with. YouTube, everything is out here. There was this one time, the video's not up anymore, but I made a video about the time that UPS lost my box with all my childhood videos in it. There's no video footage of me right now that at least I have of me from birth until I am about 18 or 19, right? Back in 2012, my dad was mailing me the box with all of our home videos, all of the Christmases and winter blizzard of 1996, 9th birthday in Venice, and everything. And he was mailing me the box, and I was going to turn everything into DVDs. DVDs, look at where the time is going. But when the box got here, I wasn't home. I was in Myrtle Beach because my job had sent me to a conference. And when I got back, that box was nowhere to be found. So I say all that to say, I made this YouTube video just cussing out UPS. This is back when I used to cuss on the channel. And then I forgot, the channel wasn't even big like that, but somehow my kids found it. And so in the video, because I made it at 3 a.m, and I still had my do-rag on. This is when I still had wavelength hair. And so the kids are like, "Hey, Mr. Michael knows, he cusses a lot." It was me and the next I was hot. Because it's the more I think about it, I'm not mad about it anymore. I'm like, who knows? Maybe one day I'll be famous and somebody has been sitting with that box of tapes and they'll realize it's me and they'll mail it to me or something. Maybe hold it for ransom and I got to pay them $1 million. I don't know. But yeah, I was hot. Everything. All of the childhood videos of me and Brandon at Christmas, and we used to have dog, everything. All of my little concerts when I was a little kid, and all of that crap is gone. Thank you, UPS. And then, when I did the follow-up and everything, they didn't even bring it to the right door. That's what pissed me off. They gave it to one of the other neighbors. And of course, I'm knocking on all the neighbors' doors. The old complex that I used to live in, all of my neighbors were from El Salvador. So I'm over there trying to speak Spanish, la grande caja es mi. This, man. Anyway, let's see. Marcel said, sounds like the same thing they say to pro-black athletes, because last time I checked, their talent on the field or court got them that $1 million contract. Oh, they love to throw that in athletes' faces as well. And again, that feeling of ownership. Remember Simone Biles when she got the twisties and had to pull out of the Olympics, and then you saw all of these out-of-shape folks that can't even bend down and touch their toes. And I'm not singing the song. I'm just talking about the flexibility that gymnasts have. saying they were dragging that girl so bad. And I'm like, well, I want to see you go out there on the balance beam. Go on out there. You got it, right? They love to do that. Same thing with Colin Kaepernick. Same thing with any athlete that has any kind of personality. They hate Serena. They hated when LeBron opened the school. They just kind of want you to shut up and dribble or shut up and catch the ball and everything else like that. And then when you get too successful, they get an attitude and think you're not supposed to have that much. And there's something that you must have done wrong to get it, or they feel that there's something that is owed to them with it all, which is wild to me. It's kind of like even watching the World Cup, where the weirdest part, I love, I like rooting for all the African countries. I just be rooting for the black folks I be seeing on there. But like, it's interesting watching some of the like whitest of white countries have these all black teams, where all the players are these African players, right? It'd be like Norway. And, Norway is like as white as it comes when it comes, the Norwegian countries, Norway and Denmark and Finland, and the whole team be black, right? Whole team, Austria. I was like, where are these people at? Because when I lived on that side of the world, I don't remember seeing that many of us over there, but the team over representation. And then the weirdest part is when you're watching, and there was somebody, I don't know her handle, but there was somebody who was saying that same thing, but they're like, it's kind of weird, like watching the colonizer play the colonized, and it's people from the same, technically lineage or the same country. So like, you have like Belgium and Congo playing each other. And then the African players that are on both teams probably have family that are all from Congo, but you got one set playing specifically for Congo, one set playing for Belgium. And it's like, it's not the actual people of Belgium. It's the people that have been, added for the team. I mean, they live there, but you know what I'm saying? It's interesting. So there's that. Somebody said we don't have to misgender black women over here. Yeah, that's in response to the person saying stuff about Michelle. And that's silly, right? Very silly. Michelle gets under everybody's skin, and not us, but their skin. And she gets under their skin, one, because she is educated, and not only educated, but more educated than the average person. She is double Ivy League, okay? Right? Lawyer. She had her own even before she met Barack. She technically, I want to say, was his boss, right? And then she's an attractive woman. She was in shape when she was in the White House, and she normalized the experience of a black family being at the forefront of like American pop culture and everything, where she didn't do traditional things as a first lady. A lot of first ladies, not including maybe Hillary or Roosevelt's wife, a lot of the first ladies, their job was to kind of just shut up, bake cookies, and give the tour. That's it. Michelle had initiatives. She was, on Jimmy Fallon. She had a life. She was on Sesame Street. Like, she's teaching the kids about fruits and vegetables, and they don't want all that. Her job was supposed to sit down and shut up and be quiet. Because y'all ain't even supposed to be in there. Y'all getting too comfortable. And then you moved your mama in. Like, all that stuff got under their skin to the point where this man has not been in office for like a decade, and he's still on Orange Man's mind, and he's still on the minds of everybody else. So yeah, they keep going after the wife. And I love that Michelle doesn't give energy to any of it. Like, Michelle's like, whatever, right? And then they do all that. And that also includes people who tend to be in the same political party. They'll say and do all that, but then they want Michelle to come and save the country. They want her to run for president so bad. And I hope she continues to say no. Michelle, live your best life. Y'all did what y'all need to do. Tell them, get your, you know what. Thank you, Solitary Man in Black. Also, shout out to you, Solitary. You be hyping me up on the platforms and always sharing my content. So I appreciate that. All right, we gotta keep it moving, y'all. Tanji2936 said no notification for the live. I didn't post an announcement. So, and then again, I think when I put the live into the YouTube system, it was only about an hour and a half before it started. So it might not have even registered on your feed. But like I said, for people who are subscribed, go to my page and make sure that the bell is checked so that, or actually make sure you're still subscribed, because some people keep saying that they've been unsubscribed and didn't know that they were. So yeah. Calvin, what new car did I get? Well, it ain't really new. Speaking of, yeah, I bought a Toyota Corolla last year, which I didn't want to do because my car was already paid for. Like, I had a lovely Kia Forte that was paid off. When the car's paid off, you just feel free. I'm just riding it. But anyway, it started making expensive sounds, and it was an older car. And then there's too much stuff going on with the car. Like, somebody had broken into it. while in my parking garage that I had to pay $280 a month for. Yeah, long story short, by the time Orange Man got back in the office and he started talking all that tariff stuff and my car was making expensive noises, I knew that car only had about a year left of life. And I wasn't sure if the kind of work that I was doing was going to start having me come into work full time because, I work from home. And so I was like, let me just go ahead and get a car now before these tariffs kick in and these prices skyrocket. So I bought me a lovely 2024 Toyota Corolla, right? Now, the other day, I had just finished babysitting my godson and I was being greedy because I was still hungry. And so I was like, oh, well, let me go ahead and pick up there was nothing open. So I'm like, it's not even my favorite place, but I'll just grab some IHOP because I got a taste for something sweet. Somebody hit my car while I was in IHOP. Somebody backed right into my car. Dang it. So fortunately, they only hit the bumper. Mind you, I missed the whole thing. But it was like, I just came out and I saw that crease on that corner of my bumper. It's like, and of course, IHOP. They ain't got no cameras working. Ain't nobody seen nothing. And it's crazy because I didn't even hear it. Normally when somebody hits a car, you hear it. I ain't heard nothing because, of course, the music in IHOP was so loud. So either way, I'll just pay for it out of pocket because at this point, the deductible will be higher than the damage that needs to be fixed on that bumper. So I'll fix it. And fortunately, I'm glad it was just that. But all I know is as soon as I came out and saw that dent, first thing I was like, dang, I just paid for this car. Again, because I'm pissed that I got a car note, right? You get a new car. Now you got to pay a car note and the insurance goes up. Like, adulting is not fun, right? All right, guys, I got to get to my topics, y'all. Okay, I'm at the bottom of the chat. So y'all got 1 minute and then we got to keep it moving. Somebody said, think about not eating fast food after that Arby's story. I don't even know what you're talking about, but I've never had Arby's. So whatever happened with the Arby's story, thank you for letting me know not to go there. But I don't even want to know. Somebody said hot air gun or dryer or pop it out yourself. So I did pop out part of it. There's a piece that's still like in there. And my other issue is it looks like it pushed my brake light a tiny bit like into the car. So I still need to go and get that fixed because I'm not sure about that wiring. So I'm going to just get it fixed. It is what it is. I wanted to try to do that thing, but knowing me and my luck, I'll be on this live telling y'all how my whole bumper came off. So we just gonna get the professionals to do it. I was so mad. I was like, dang, man. Like, I've never, fortunately, I don't know what, I've never been in a car accident or anything like that. So I was like, man, you just can't win. Let's see. Somebody said, my car was bumped last year and I had a dent that was mostly cosmetic. Was a pain in the behind to go through insurance to fix it. Yeah, that's why I was like, I'm not even calling Progressive. Progressive be on some nonsense. So no. All right, last thing, and then I got to get the thing. Justin said, after seeing how this country treated Stacey Abrams, Kamala, Jasmine Crockett, Michelle knows that these people are BSing. Exactly. Okay, let us move on, folks. But great conversation. So let's talk about your commander in chief, right? First of all, let me just start. We know that there's been a bipartisan housing bill that was passed, which to me was like a miracle because Democrats and Republicans can't get anything done because they spend all day fighting on everything. One party wants to actively participate in the dismantling of this country, and the other party seems like they're trying to save it, but they don't got the fight in them. But anyway, this was something that passed. I want to share just some of the details about this bill because this is a part. All right. So a number of factors have made homes out of reach for many U.S. buyers. According to the real estate broker Redfin, a family needs an income of about $117,000 a year to afford the typical home on the market, almost $30,000 more than what most U.S. households earn. I also want to say to that point, if a family, let's just say it's a family of three, if a family of three is earning $117,000 a year and they are able to purchase a house, they're going to be house poor because they're not bringing in enough to pay for the mortgage and then also still cover their bills and live comfortably. They're going to be living a serious check-to-check life where they're just barely above water just because of how expensive housing is. Just want to put that out there. Mortgage rates have also risen over the past several years, and that boosts the monthly cost of ownership. Rates had been falling early this year, but the war in Iran raised the cost of borrowing, and the nationwide average is now about 6.5%. Families also have less purchasing power, what we were just saying, as inflation has outstripped wages. But the main issue this bill tries to address is that the U.S. does not have enough houses to keep up with the demand. Realtor.com estimated that last year, the U.S. was short by more than 4 million housing units. I will say somebody who's running for president had a plan for that. Anyway, supply is the key problem here, said Jenna Kinney, assistant professor of economics, finance, and real estate at Villanova University. Anything you can do to make supply easier is going to be helpful in the long term. Ban on corporate investors that buy hundreds of homes. Rather than making a single change, the bill is a hodgepodge of provisions designed to either encourage housing construction or make it easier for home seekers to buy. The flashiest part of the package is a ban that prevents corporate investors from buying up more single-family homes to rent out. If one of those groups already owns at least 350 houses, it won't be able to buy others. This provision was one of the most contested as the bill worked its way through the legislative process. Some politicians endorsed it as a move to stop corporate landlords from being able to outbid families and buy up large chunks of local housing markets with cash offers. Think of all the times, for those of you who have been trying to purchase a home, where you were ready to put in a bid and then you lost because somebody outbid you, had cash ready, and bought the house. Half the time, it wasn't even a real person. It's these corporations and these private equity firms. But nationally, these investors make up only about 3% of the single-family rental market. And some experts warn the ban could actually limit the supply of available homes because investors often buy and fix up homes that would otherwise fall out of the market. It chills investment. We need more investment in housing stock, not less, said Ross Marchand, executive director of the right-leaning, that's all I needed to know because that wasn't sounding right, think tank, the Taxpayers Protection Alliance. Still warned investor ban, pointing out investors are buying up a large slice of the market in some parts of the country, such as Atlanta. For those of you in Atlanta, you know how everything has gotten very expensive as far as the cost of living, and y'all keep moving further out from the city, and now y'all are way out in Henry County, right? Some of y'all are also moving almost to Forsyth County, right? Way out of Atlanta Metro. If you don't live in a neighborhood where private equity has already moved in, believe me, you're on the list, Warren said. I'm going to stop there. So what ends up happening is this bill is passed, and it's something that is going to again, pass in the House, pass in the Senate. It's something that was going to help make the housing market kind of balance out a little bit, make it easier for people who want to be home buyers. Because we're now in the era where we're not even in the era of what you call the starter home, because even the starter homes are too expensive. There was an era in time, before my time as an adult, where you could still get a starter home, right? Where you get a house that wasn't super expensive. It may not be the most fanciest house, but it was something to start with. Right? Usually married couples, maybe they just had a newborn. You get the starter home. It's cute, nice 2 or 3 bedroom house, maybe 1 bathroom, anywhere between 8 and then maybe 1,400 or 1,500 square feet. And people get their starter home. Maybe they live there for a few years. As they climb the ranks in their careers and make a bit more money, then they sell that property and they move into the next home or a bigger home, or maybe their forever home. We're not there anymore. And so we're now in this era where people, again, are making 6 figures and are still renting out an apartment because they can't find a home that is suitable and affordable enough where they'll be able to at least be able to live without having to get 2 or 3 other side hustles. Or, you know, especially for people that are single. It's a bit better for people who are married because at least there's the conversation of dual income. But for people who may be single, the idea of buying a house gets harder and harder, and it becomes something that's further and further away. So anyway, with that being said, your president has decided he is not signing the bill. And the reason he is not signing the bill is because he's decided that he wants the SAVE Act to pass, right? And unless the SAVE Act passes, he's not signing this bill. No ifs, ands, or buts. Because again, when it comes to our livelihood, he has no problem holding it hostage if he can't get his way. And so what has been very interesting in all of this is we've talked about the SAVE Act, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through all of it, but I will share this tidbit and share this page with just some of the basic facts about what the SAVE Act is, and then we're going to have another conversation. So let's go to that. Okay, so when we're talking about the SAVE Act, right, and it's really called the Save America Act because, you know, they love to paint the picture that America is in danger by the big boogeyman. So the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act would require all American citizens registering to vote to update their registration information to present documentary proof of citizenship in person. For the vast majority of Americans, this would be a passport or a birth certificate. Government-issued driver's licenses, including real IDs, as well as military or tribal IDs, do not satisfy the bill's requirement. Again, this means that when you go to register to vote, because they also want you to do this in person, you're going to have to bring the documents like the birth certificate or the passport. You just can't show up with your real ID, even though they just chased us down about the real ID since the Bush era, about when the real ID comes in, that's going to be the official ID for everything. You won't need anything else. And that's going to be as legit as it comes. And now the real ID is here. And I think it's finally been implemented nationwide as of May of 2025. And never mind to all that, because it's still not enough, right? So there's that. The legislation would invert the responsibility to verify a person's eligibility and citizenship status from election officials and the government onto every single American citizen, making citizens convince the government that they're eligible to exercise their right to vote. The SAVE Act would change the way all citizens register to vote upon enactment. It would upend online voter registration, make it impossible to mail in a registration application, and eliminate voter registration drives. Right? You can't even get to the sign up no more. That's done. Statistics. Approximately 146 million American citizens do not possess a valid passport. For context, 153 million Americans voted in the 2024 presidential general election. High rates of passport ownership are overwhelmingly concentrated in blue states, while low rates are concentrated in red states. In 7 states, less than 1/3 of citizens have a valid passport: West Virginia, Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, and Oklahoma. Only in 4 states do more than 2/3 of the citizens have a valid passport: New York, Massachusetts, California, and Jersey. And then it kind of shows you a map of, the percentage of people who have valid passports and everything. And it's by state too. So there's that. This is AmericanProgress.org if you want to go through this a little bit further. Now, one of the biggest parts about the SAVE Act, 84% of women who marry change their surname, meaning as many as 69 million American women do not have a birth certificate with their legal name on it, and thereby could not use their birth certificate to prove citizenship. What they're trying to say is that because a lot of times when women get married, they change their last name. And so when you would show up to the place to register to vote, the name that would be on your driver's license or your passport is not going to match the name that is on the birth certificate that you were born with. And so that's one of the loopholes that they have not made an effort to fix with the SAVE Act, but they're still trying to push, which we'll go to a later point that I'm going to get to in a second. The SAVE Act makes no mention of being able to show a marriage certificate or change of name documentation. As many as 69 million American women. Okay, we already said that part, so I'm gonna skip it. Let's see. SAVE Act possesses a serious socioeconomic issue that will disproportionately impact working class and lower income Americans. Only 1 in 4 Americans with a high school degree or less have a valid passport. Only 1 in 5 Americans with an income below $50,000 have a valid passport. Young Americans, those 18 to 29. Damn, I'm not even a young American anymore. All right. Those with college and postgraduate levels of education, wealthy Americans, and those who identify as liberal or Democrat are most likely the groups to possess the required forms of documentation. Coastal elites are the least likely group to be adversely affected by the bill. Republicans are less likely to possess a passport, and conservative and Republican-leaning women are twice as likely to have changed their surname. I'm going to stop there. Actually, no, I'm not. Let me see here. Even small changes such as moving into an apartment building, moving down the block, or changing party affiliation are considered voter registration updates. Under the SAVE Act, Americans would have to go in person to their election office and present original or certified documentation to make any voter registration change. This would make civic participation much more difficult for tens of millions of people. Every election cycle would outright disenfranchise millions more. The policies of the SAVE Act would be in addition to the state voter ID laws that require voters to show identification at the polls. Online voter registration, a service 42 states already rely on, would be upended or even eliminated. So a place like Oregon, where people are automatically registered to vote, that program would be done. Voters could no longer mail in voter registration applications. That would be done. Automatic voter registration, again, that would be gutted. And that also includes voting or registering to vote online. I'm going to stop there. No, I'm not. One last piece. Real IDs would not work. It states that a form of identification issued consistent with the requirements of the Real ID Act of 2005 indicates that the applicant is a citizen of the United States can be used. However, no state's Real ID indicates citizen status, and legally reading non-citizens can obtain Real ID. So we're going to stop there. That is a mouthful. They do this because they know it disproportionately affects people, right? And the thing that I find interesting, because all of this, again, is rooted in the conversation of voter fraud, and they love to paint this big boogeyman, right? I'm going to say this. It's interesting that a country that has such a low voter turnout, for us to be that country, it's so funny that they constantly paint this whole story of voter fraud. Like even like I'm in DC, but if I talk about Maryland last night had a turnout rate of 16%. 16%. But somehow the people in charge are convinced that there's all this fraud going on. I mean, fraud. They use that word so much, fraud and theft and just lying, right? And they talk about it as if all of the criminals in the world just get together like it's a scene out of The Godfather. And what are we going to do tomorrow? And it's like, we're going to vote. We're going to go and we're going to vote. That'll show them. Like, it's like, y'all are just cuckoo, right? And really, it's a way that, one of the things is, it's a way that they can intimidate people to stay home. If they can make everything punitive and continue to paint people as the bad guy. Now, we did this story before, but I want to revisit it because this is one of the other things that they're also doing on the other end of the spectrum to make sure. And this goes back to what I was saying when I was talking about that 2 election cycles. Stay with me because I'm going to come back to that point in a second. Let me shift and go to this video here. Some of you may remember this. All right.
Release showing multiple arrests for voter fraud charges in Florida. The arrests were part of a larger sweep earlier this year. All were convicted felons who had served their time and allegedly told they were eligible to vote again. Senior national correspondent Brian Enton has the details.
Kelly, we have known about these arrests since August, but this is our first time seeing the body camera video, and the suspects certainly appear to be shocked when the police show up and say they're going to jail.
I guess you have a warrant?
For what?
I'm not sure.
Voter stuff, man.
Police body cam video obtained by the Tampa Bay Times shows Floridians being arrested for voter fraud.
So unfortunately, right now, we're going to have to take you to jail.
Voter fraud. What is voter fraud?
Voting when you're not supposed to, sir. That's what our understanding. Because of your sex offender status, you're not supposed to be voting.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' new Office of Election Crimes and Security arrested 19 people back in August.
I'm like, voter fraud? I voted, but I ain't saw committing fraud.
Well, so that's the thing. I don't know exactly what happened with it, but you do have a warrant. That's what it's for.
Oh my God.
The 19 people arrested are accused of voting illegally in the 2020 election because they had previously been convicted of murder or sex offenses, according to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. While Florida constitutional amendment restored some felons' rights to vote in Florida, it did not include that group.
They did not go through any process. They did not get their rights restored, and yet they went ahead and voted anyways. That is against the law, and now they're going to pay the price for it.
Some of the suspects seemed confused during their arrests, claiming voting groups encouraged them to register to vote.
He says, hey, I'm pretty sure I can. He goes, well, are you still on probation? I said, no. I got off probation like a month ago. He goes, well, then you could probably vote. Hey, just fill out the form. Why would y'all let me vote if I wasn't able to vote?
I'm not sure, buddy. I don't know.
And then why now? This happened years ago.
State law does say that the voters had to willfully commit the crimes, and that's where there could possibly be a gray area. There were these very aggressive voter groups going door to door and sending out mailers, trying to tell felons that they could now vote. It will ultimately be up to prosecutors to decide whether to move forward with these cases. Kelly?
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider.
Okay, so getting back to our conversation, and just as an update with those cases, because I went and did the follow-up, because I was like, nah, that was from 2022. So I was like, well, let me see what happened with everybody else. So of the 19 who were arrested, 9 were sentenced to probation. 1 had their case dismissed. 1 was fined. Somebody actually passed away, unfortunately. I don't know of what. And then there are 8 cases that are still under review, meaning that this is still going on almost 4 years later. The reality is, 1, just as a detail, that whole enforcement group, that was, Ron DeSantis decided he was going to create an entire police force specifically to go out and attack voter fraud. Please remember that for a quick second. All right, because we're coming back to that as well. And so all of this was in response specifically in the state of Florida to an amendment that passed back in 2018. We talked about Amendment 4 when it passed. Amendment 4 was voted on by the people of Florida, where they decided, yes, people who have been convicted of nonviolent crimes should have the right to get their voting rights restored, as long as they haven't done like a violent crime like murder or anything else like that. And the thing was, when that passed, that made it so that there were upwards of 1 million people who were now eligible to vote. More than enough to swing the state back in a different direction politically, depending on how those who would have voted acted. And so what ended up happening is they start trying to find every way possible to kind of slow that and combat that, because there's a whole lot of voter fraud. So let's start this entire police force that's going to go out after the fraud and the waste. Because again, all of these people who have done whatever, the sinister thing they really want to do is vote. So can we talk about this voter fraud? Because I love some numbers, right? I love me some numbers, because the way that they talk about this, you would think that there were millions upon millions of people voting illegally. Like when Trump won in 2016, but technically lost the popular vote by almost 3 million. And he said, oh, those were all illegal votes coming from Mexico. The thing is, there's always resources here. So you know what? Let's play a game, everybody. This is a lovely map here that actually points out the cases of voter fraud by state. So somebody in the chat, pick a state, and we're going to see just how many tens of thousands of people have fraudulently voted. So somebody in the chat, I'm going to go by the first one that I see. Give me any state, and we'll go to it. All right. See how delayed my latency is with. All right. Somebody said Colorado. All right, folks, we're going to Colorado. Colorado has had 24 cases statewide. And the cool thing, when you click it, it will give you all the logistics of what happened in Colorado. And these were people who had, again, they voted and they had criminal convictions. All right. Let's go make it 50. Yeah, so all 24 people, all were arrested or charged with voter fraud because they had some kind of criminal conviction and they voted. Ooh, that sounds like 20,000 people to me. What's another one I see on here? I see Connecticut. All right, let's go to Connecticut. Good thing I know my map. 31 cases. Boy, that's a long way from hundreds of thousands of people. 31 cases. Let's see. Let's go 50 here. All right. What was the judicial finding? Civil penalty, criminal conviction. And look at the years, by the way. 1988, 91, 94, 96, 90. All of these are old. Like, where's recent fraud? The recent fraud, let's go about 2020. 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 cases. 5 in recent times. And I want to go to Florida too. I'm going to go to Florida because, you know, DeSantis started an entire police force for this, right? So they have what, 90? I think it was 93. Yeah, 93. I just want to see something here. Oh, they was getting everybody. See, this right here is that surge that he did, where he did raid, criminal convictions. But let's talk about before the raid, right? 2018. Okay, these are pretty modern. All right. Either way, a state like Florida, you had these are all old. Okay, this is all old. But anyway, back to my point. A state like Florida, where again, you had upwards of 1 million people who had, you know, paid their debt to society as far as being convicted of nonviolent crimes, and they served their time or had their probation or paid their fines. Upwards of 1 million people. And you mean to tell me y'all could only find 93 people? Somebody said Texas. All right, let's do Texas. Texas, as big as Texas is big, and mind you, I think Texas and Minnesota are the two with the highest number. 113 cases, right? For your president and everybody in his party and Speaker Mike Johnson and all these people who spend all this time talking about voter fraud, they talk about it as if you have hundreds of thousands of people who are doing all this illegal voting and putting their livelihood at risk to go check a box for a candidate, right? And again, a lot of this is, you can tell this is actively like newer, where it's like they purposely are trying to find the dirt. Because, okay, before, these are relatively old. If we go to the previous window, I say the conversation about voter fraud kicked in after 2020, to be honest. I mean, he kind of talked about it a little bit in 2016, but he wasn't pressed about it until he lost the election. But either way, these numbers don't match the hoopla. 113 in a state as big and as populated as Texas. Be for real. Somebody said Illinois. All right, let's see what Illinois has. Illinois, I'm not going to keep going through all of them. Illinois has 117. Somebody said Tennessee. You know what? Just for the sake of time, we'll just go through all of them. All right. Washington State, my home state, 15 cases. 15. All right. How old are these? I just want to, since it's my old state, let's see what we got going here. And all of these are old, minus maybe these two. All of these are throwbacks, right? Silly. Oregon, 18 cases. Big California, where the 3 million people illegally voted from Mexico to vote for Hillary. 71 cases, right? The most populous state, most populated state in the country, 71 cases. Alaska, 5 cases. Nevada, 11. Idaho, 13. Montana, 2. Wyoming, 4. Utah, 3. Arizona, 40. New Mexico, 8. Colorado, we did before, 24. North Dakota, 12. South Dakota, 6. Nebraska, 3. Kansas, 17. Oklahoma, 5. Minnesota, 138. Iowa, 29. Missouri, 30. Arkansas, 6. Louisiana, 8. Florida, we did 93. Georgia, 36. Alabama, 41. Mississippi, 45. Tennessee, 25. Kentucky, 62. Indiana, 59. Illinois, 117. Wisconsin, 68. Michigan, 19. Ohio, 63. West Virginia, 38. Virginia, 36. North Carolina, 123. South Carolina, 1. Boy, they must have really been violent. Dangerous. Delaware, 0 cases. Maryland, 10 cases. Pennsylvania, 45. New Jersey, 53. New York, 28. Massachusetts, 4. Vermont, 0. New Hampshire, 29. Maine, 2. In total, that is not even 2,000 cases nationwide. And I'm jumping the gun. That's not even really technically 1,000 if we probably do the math, right? It's maybe about 1,000 nationwide. And that's not in one election cycle. That is based on when they started documenting. So we've seen years as far back as like 1981. But that has been the brunt of these conversations, the energy behind the SAVE Act, the reason DeSantis needed to create an entire police force to go and raid and snatch up black folks out of their house and then have a whole press conference as if he had arrested 900 people who had done a bunch of different things. And the wildest part is in that video, one of the people who got stopped, their voter registration card came in the mail, meaning that they went through the process and the people in charge of election integrity still passed them on and said, you're good to go. If you are a citizen and you get a federal or a state document that's saying, yes, you can vote and here's your place in your polling location, why would you, for any reason, think that you're doing something illegal? You're thinking you're doing everything right, especially because this law has just passed in 2018. I'm going to go vote. Now, all of a sudden, I'm this criminal, and you got the news cameras watching me get put in the back of a car, and then the governor wants to have a press conference and talk about me like I cut somebody's head off. A lot of foolery. Actually, I'm not done because I still want to keep going. Now, the thing I will say is, going back to the housing bill that this initially started with, the thing that does work, at least in everybody's favor, is that because the housing bill was passed with a veto-proof supermajority, Donald Trump can't do a whole lot. So he doesn't want to sign the thing. But with this same bill, the way that our politics works is, well, after 10 days, if it's already passed in the House and the Senate, it automatically becomes law whether or not the president signs the bill. And so right now, his next step has been trying to intimidate Republicans that have voted for it. He had a luncheon with Republicans today. He was cussing them out, but that's more so about the stuff going on with Iran. Whole lot of nonsense, whole lot of foolery. But the thing is, remember how I said you only need 2 election cycles to flush out everything and everybody? It works the same way in the other aspect of the conversation. One of the things that they really, really would like to do is if they can get all of their people in the positions of power that they need them to get in, they can change the structures, they can change the rules, they can set it up where we don't have to have any more elections and things will just be the way that it is based on who says how it's going to go. That's the goal. And so I think that's one of the reasons why there's been such an attack on elections and such an attack on, you see them doing the thing with wanting the United States Postal Service to, not give ballots to states that refuse to turn over their voter information to the federal government. Since when is the post office responsible for whatever's happening with our voting integrity to the point where the post office is now not going to deliver ballots and stuff to specific states if that state has refused to hand over their election information to the federal government? Mind you, this is not coming from a place of integrity. This is coming from a place where we don't know what the hell they're doing, but it's some surveillance kind of nonsense. I would say right now, mail-in voting, I'd be real skittish about. You might need to go and stand in the line at the polls because that's probably the best thing right now based on the way that they are moving. But the reality is, like I'm saying, if they can get enough butts in the seats when it comes to getting their people in positions of power, they can make a lot of changes that will become permanent, right? And this means getting others out the way. And that's why they're arresting people. And that's why there's the voter fraud, and purging of the voter rolls. So think back to Georgia when Brian Kemp purged those 200,000 people out of the voter rolls right before the election. Like, you have all those different things taking place. And what also makes it easier is when you have a bunch of fools who are ready and willing to make it happen. I want to go to this clip that's very interesting, by the way. Because the other thing, too, is getting people on board. They'll do it through influence and they will do it through enforcement. The enforcement is what we're seeing now. Them arresting people, them trying to pass all these draconian laws, making the big boogeyman and creating police forces to go after voting fraud when you didn't even have that many cases in the state. But the other element is influence. And that's where something like a Prager U comes into the conversation. That's where something like Turning Point USA comes into the conversation. In the same way that they're going after the kids with Prager U and trying to get that into all of the school systems to kind of reteach history and make Americans look at our history very differently, to a point where after you have a generation go through this new indoctrination process, they won't question the horrible atrocities that white Americans have done to everybody else, and it will make them just love America a little bit more. That's what's happening, right? You got Prager U in Florida schools right now. They're spreading into different spaces, but when it comes to the adults, that's where Turning Point USA comes in. That's how Charlie Kirk became this massive thing. And they also utilize the idea of religion, right? Turning Point USA was not a religious organization when it started. It was a political movement. And then they threw a little bit of white Jesus in there and some scripture. And so they incorporate the anti-blackness, white nationalist, white supremacist, evil Nazi fascist nonsense, but they throw a little bit of scripture in there to sanitize it. And then they bring in a lot of people. So they latch on to the emotional and spiritual appeals of people who are looking for answers to whatever in their life doesn't make sense, to those who may have just had to bury a parent, or who was going through a divorce, or maybe they dealt with substance abuse. So there's something that they're dealing with that they're trying to get the answers to. They're trying to get that internal healing. And they find a place like Turning Point where everybody is so lovely and so nice, and they have Bible studies and they have songs, and you can talk about the idea of even like a spiritual psychosis with music, how you can get people to really lock in, and they do all that and it sounds all lovely, but in reality there's a bigger agenda and it's getting everybody on board. So let's talk about how that influence works. I want to go to this clip, which I was like, yo, white women, y'all are down bad. Y'all are down real bad. So let's go to this clip. This is coming from CBC, which is Canadian Broadcasting Channel. All right.
3 women
sorry.
ages who thought it was a good idea.
I actually do agree with her. I would as well give up my vote if it to got rid of like things like abortion. Hopefully that would never happen. I would like to, I feel like with my mindset, I would want to put my vote in, but the majority of women are liberal, and I think getting rid of that would actually help women more.
My perspective as a Christian woman is that my husband and I are one flesh. I feel the same way he does, so honestly, I would be okay with giving up my right to vote, because I know that he would represent me well.
Do I like the power to vote? Have I ever missed an election since I was 18? Absolutely not. But I think she has a very big point. If my husband's the head of the household, I am the neck, and we work very cohesively together.
Do you think your daughter should have the right to vote?
I'd be okay if she didn't, because I also know she's going to marry a biblical man, that they would also be in line.
Y'all. Whoo. Oh, God. What? What? Oh my God. How married to whiteness are you that now you're throwing your own rights? What the fudge? Okay. Now, remember, I started saying this after the 2016 election, where I said white people vote as households. This is the living proof that I'm talking about. You heard how that woman said, well, my husband is of Christian faith, blah, 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 household. There's a segment of the population that's just far gone, and they're going to stay far gone. And you just got to keep them in their cuckoo bubble, and we got to work with everybody else. Because this is why when they keep saying, oh, white women are going to be the determining factor, I'm like, no, because this is what they're doing, right? As much as I almost started thinking that Kamala might have had a shot in 2024, I was like, I don't know. I don't know about white women. I remember saying that when Joe stepped out and she was announced immediately. I was like, ooh, I don't know about how white women are going to move on this. And it started based on how things were going, because Kamala was having the speeches and the rallies and it. I'm like, okay, maybe she has there might be a shot. White women were like, absolutely not, because this is what they have going. They are now willing to give up their right to vote, the very thing that their grandmothers and great grandmothers fought for. They're willing to throw it all away in the name of whiteness, but it's going to be blanketed under the veil of Christianity. So they will sit here and misquote and misinterpret the Bible and everything else like that, and utilize it as a justification for their nonsense, because they know that deep down inside, a lot of the things that they are fighting for oppress and marginalize other groups of people. But again, for me, like I've been saying, when it comes to religion in this country, and if you're talking about the idea of Christianity, evangelicals and the whole Turning Point USA folks, their God is whiteness. That's what their God is. Their God is the God that allows them to be the anomaly at everybody else's expense. That's what they worship. That's what they're thankful for. That's what they believe in. please understand. Like, that's why if you notice, a lot of times, you remember in the movie The Help, where which is the worst example, but remember the movie when Viola yells at the racist girl, she's like, "You're a godless woman." That scene never did much for me because I was like, for that white woman, she doesn't care, because she doesn't even see the spirituality that Black people may have religiously as something that we're deserving of when it comes to the idea of grace or the idea of salvation or anything like that. We're not a part of that. They don't see us as deserving of that. So they'll let Black folks do the performative thing, like having Jerome from the one Black person in Trump's cabinet, aside from Herschel Walker, who's the ambassador to the Bahamas. Jerome, I forgot his last name. He's the guy that's over HUD. And you notice when Trump has his cabinet meetings, Jerome never has a seat at the table. He got to stand up. But what do they let Jerome do? They let Jerome do the prayer. And, he loves to come in there and be so holier than thou and act like he just got all the conviction in the world. He can do a prayer. And I'm like, none of that is connecting with them. They don't see us as one and the same. This is why Sundays are one of the most segregated days in the country. It goes back to everything I said in my Charlie Kirk video, and folks got mad. I'm like, y'all don't get it. They are using this white nationalism, all that other crap, as a way to pull people in, but they do it through a lens of Christianity. And so now you got these stupid women on here, I'm talking the ones in the video, talking about, I'd be fine if my daughter lost her right to vote because I know she married a man of Christian faith. Orange Man is claiming that he is of Christian faith, where his favorite book of the Bible is 2 Corinthians, right? When they asked him his favorite verse, and he said they're just all too personal to me. It's just too personal, because he doesn't read at all, right? We've seen him try to read. The amendment, very big word, amendment. Okay, right. They're on some nonsense, and to me, like I said, all of that is wild to me, where they're now, like, you saw the one woman who was saying the part where she was like, yeah, because most women are liberal, so this would be good to take away their vote. Like, you see how you're moving? She has an awareness that her thought process and how she sees the world is not how the majority of the people who come from her same demographic feel. And so she's willing to strip away the agency of her very own collective, even if it means it's her own self being collateral, in order to push an agenda that she wants to believe in, which again is centered in the idea of whiteness. They're eating their own. And then they want us to also still be collateral at the same time. But at this point, they're eating their own, right? And so these are the kind of women that tell a woman that's in an abusive marriage who's getting punched in the back of the face every day to stay in a marriage because the Bible says no divorce, right? Just work it out. And he gets to cheat and beat her up some more and send her to the hospital all the time, and she keeps coming back, right? Kind of reminds me of that Dixie Chick song, Earl. But the only thing is, at least on their song, Earl died. Earl had to die. Like, at least they killed him. But yeah, white folks, I mind my business over here, but y'all got a lot going on the home front over there. I'm just saying. And mind you, that clip was in response to one of the, I guess, influencers or people at Turning Point who was advocating, and this was another woman who was advocating for women to lose their right to vote, then saying it should only be for men, specifically white men is really what they're talking about. And that was the response of some of the women at this Turning Point USA conference, right? So while Erica Kirk is coming down with the pyrotechnics and the water spraying out of the stage and everybody's celebrating and trying to paint her to be this beacon of femininity, please. Erica, my God. All right, I'm going to stop and read some comments. But yeah, that's the space we're in. And like I said, they love to throw Christianity in there as like the veil to kind of water it down. So yeah, just say all the terrible things you want to do, but then speak about it and make it somewhat religious. Like, nonsense. Are you not embarrassed? All right, let's read some comments here. I'm trying to get to where we left off last time. Crystal Castleberry said, as a realtor in Atlanta, it's hard to find a turnkey. I thought you said turkey. Okay. It's hard to find a turnkey starter home under $300,000. You have to find those little pocket areas or look on the outskirts of Metro Atlanta. Yeah. Let's see. Let's see. Somebody said this isn't even required to purchase an AK-47. No, because they give those away like shoes at a Foot Locker. Just get as many as you want. Somebody said requiring a passport to vote when passports aren't free is a poll tax. And see, when we stripped away Section 4A of the Voting Rights Act in 2013, this is the end result. Somebody said conveniently showing black people. And that's in response to the video clip we were showing where they were arresting the people for the fraud. They know what they're doing. You got to paint the boogeyman, right? Even the idea of voter fraud. It's presented from a standpoint of the only people who are supposed to vote in this country are supposed to look like this. And everybody else, if you get the luxury to vote, you need to jump over a million hurdles, and it's a privilege, and it can be taken away right away because you guys don't know how to do it properly. And so when we talk about fraud, let's paint you all to be the face of the fraud, right? Because we're the boogeyman. And again, it got amplified after Georgia went blue. They love to paint that and talk about all the fraud. And there was USB ports and secret votes, and they were putting ballots in the trap, everything to paint this picture and make it seem like we're just that engaged in whatever, where we're willing to commit crimes for politicians. Listen, I have my political, thoughts and stuff, but I tell you what, I'm not taking a charge for any politician. Not a single one, not even the ones I vote for. If you think I'm about to risk my livelihood to check a box illegally, if I know that it's going to ruin my... No, that's ridiculous. But that's how they think because, again, simplicity. I told you, they only got like 4 tricks in the playbook that they use, right? Doesn't even make sense half the time. Yes, News Nation, exactly. Cooking up all that stuff to save up with the SAVE Act, yeah. Somebody said, you talk about white people the same amount they talk about you. No, I respond to the things that they do in our direction. Other than that, we black over here. I'm not worried about what they have going. I'm not interested at all. Now, if they weren't doing the things they were doing, we wouldn't have to talk about them, right? We could continue to carry on with the other things we do. We could do our So What Happens and our music talks and everything else we have going. But at the moment, everybody's pressed about us. So we got to respond and react accordingly, right? Somebody says, so if we average a few dozen per state, it wouldn't make a significant impact. Exactly. There's not even enough. Yeah, it's, and it seems like a lot of these voter fraud convictions are people who didn't even know they were doing something wrong, right? There's miscommunication and misunderstanding of certain things. Because again, voting already is somewhat of a hassle. You got to register, you got to do this, you got to do, it's not, it's still easy, but it's not something people are like breaking their necks to just go and do, and you can just do it with error. It's really hard to vote illegally, right? So yeah. Somebody said, yeah, I read about that. USPS is now trying to get on the voter suppression vote. They are to serve people and not the POS in the Oval Office. Guess I'll just take the day off and stand in line. That's what it's going to get to. And I can guarantee the next step would be they're going to start moving like what they tried to do in Pennsylvania in 2020 with mail-in voting, but they'll start doing it with the people that are in the lines, where they'll try to say, you must count the votes. Like I can see them putting in legislation where all votes must be counted by a certain time. And if they're not, then that's it. So even people who might still be in line, but got in line in time, you got to go home. I can see them trying to push for that, right? That's the next step. I see that coming. Somebody said, if he had his way, you'd be seen, not heard. I don't even think they want us to be seen at all, because a lot of us are very attractive. That pisses them off too. Somebody says, to be fair, I don't think these women represent most white women, but the idea this could be in any way mainstream is terrifying. Yeah, we know it doesn't represent most, but I do think if you pull that 53% that tends to vote in that direction, I want to know what the percentage from that group would how they move, right? Because again, those probably were the anomalies. The first person that was doing that report probably interviewed 20 women, and I'm sure probably of the 20, those might have been 3 that were willing to be like, yeah, I'm willing to give it up. But just the idea, like you said, just the thought of that even being a thing. Okay. Ooh, Poison Ivy, speak on it. Calvin, they didn't vote for a white woman. Of course they weren't voting for Kamala. Like I said, Hillary got less of the white women. Well, no, she got. That's the white vote. I don't remember what the white woman vote, but I know when it came to the white vote, Hillary got less of the white vote than Obama did. Right? So 2008, Obama got 45% of the white vote. 2012, he got 39%. When Hillary ran in 2016, she got 37% of the white vote. I'm like, damn, y'all turning on y'all turning on y'all own. All right. Somebody said just a bunch of Serenas from Handmaid's Tale. I've never seen that show. I just know it's the ladies with the hat things on and the big cloaks. Somebody said 2 Corinthians still makes me howl. Somebody said, remember their brand of Christianity is what gave rise to the KKK? Pretty much. Go back to that Charlie Kirk video I did. We talked all about the church or their church and how they moved. Somebody said, nah, it's most. They're just the few who are vocal about it. Somebody said, definitely watch Handmaid's Tale. I'll see. I mean, it just apparently I always see it referenced when I see like a horrible policy or something get passed and they keep talking about Handmaid's Tale. I'm like, this just sounds crazy. Maybe I will get to it. All right, let's shift gears here. Oh, the reflecting pool. Right, this has been a fun one. Where do I want to start? Do I even? Yeah. Okay. So reflecting pool. So as we know, the reflecting pool is that big, wonderful pool in DC that sits between the Lincoln Memorial and the Washington Monument or National Monument. Now we know that Orange Man had decided that he was going to drain the pool and he was going to paint the bottom of the pool blue, right? Because this was going to make the water reflect even more prettier if we paint the bottom blue. So they paint the bottom blue. They do all this stuff. You know, they drained it. They paint it. And refill it, and God bless America, America 250, let's have the UFC fight, and go America, USA. And so they do all that because he said he was going to paint it American flag blue, right? More patriotic. Few issues arise. One, they cut corners with how they did the painting. That's one piece. But 2, they also didn't think about just like the science of everything. And so what ended up happening is the issues with algae kick in, right? The reflecting pool has always had an issue with algae, even before Orange Man got in there, to be fair. It's kind of been a thing. The reflecting pool has been up and down. It's had its moments. There's been all kind of, you drain it out and do this and do that and try something different. I know when I was in college, what was in the reflecting pool wasn't really algae, but you'd see like grass and stuff growing. There might be some fish in there that didn't got in there and stuff like that. Mother Nature just does its Mother Nature thing. But anyway, algae just really kicked into the next gear once they painted, right? And the water was like greenish color to the point where they had to start pouring hydrogen peroxide and all this other stuff in the water to try to kill off the algae, counterbalance everything. Unfortunately, that wasn't really that great. And then some of the ducks died in the water as well. And then the paint started to peel as well. Let me get that image I wanted to share. So that beautiful American flag blue that they had ended up turning into this. And this starts to kind of, little pieces like this start to kind of pop up all around the reflecting pool. Now, Orange Man had a simple explanation for what was happening. So let's go to Orange Man. He can give us the example of what's going on here. All right, let us shift.
A huge gash and damage to the reflecting pool. That's the crime the president is claiming happened here. Without providing any evidence so far. Now, some new fencing has been going up around reflecting pool. Less than 2 weeks, thousands of people are expected to attend in before the July fireworks. But President Trump now says that 6 people have been arrested for vandalizing the pool.
Somebody went in with a knife and cut it. They cut it up good. And then they cut a 350-foot slip in the form of lots of little slips. A real horrible stuff.
But as of today, There is no record online of any arrests or charges in D.C. Superior Court or federal court related to these incidents. Even the acting Attorney General, Todd Blanche, says he doesn't have any information.
Have you seen any evidence of under the cases that have been brought forward that they've talked about? It's been disclosed, I think, by the White House, but we haven't really seen any paperwork on these cases. Is there a 250-foot gash, for example? That's one thing. I don't know.
The U.S. Park Police, the National Park Service, and the Interior Department have all not responded to our request for comment, even though President Trump has referred reporters to them.
Yeah, that's the right time you'll see it. You'll see it in court. You'll see it in court. But all you have to do is call the Parks Department, call the Department of Interior.
So if the president has any evidence to support these claims, it has yet to be released to the public.
Yeah. So what I find funny is, again, he loves to do this boogeyman thing, and there's always some kind of fraud or some kind of criminal stuff going. First of all, the idea that somebody went in a reflecting pool with a knife and walked at least 250 feet. I think the reflecting pool is how big? Let's see. How big is this reflecting pool? I forgot the dimensions. How big is the? All right, the reflecting pool is 167 feet wide and is 2,028 to 2,030 feet long. So somebody at least went 250 feet. That's about 2/3 of a football field, or whatever. If you're talking about, because I think football field, not in yards but in feet. Let's see, football field in feet. Let's see, football field in feet, not yards. All right, so a football field in feet is 300 feet, and then the total length of the full field is 360 if you're including the areas outside of the playing area, like where you hit your touchdown zone. All right, so about 2/3 of a football field. Somebody had a knife in populated DC, because the thing is, it's not like the monuments and stuff close at night. If you're having a really great date night and you went to the restaurants, you went to the bars, and everything is closed, and you have nothing else to do, but you're really enjoying that other person's company. You just want to keep talking, and you just want to, you're still hanging or whatever. You can always go to the monuments. They're open all night, right? So there's always people over there. There's always somebody at benches. You mean to tell me somebody came out with there with a knife? They got up and they just cut it all 250 feet long. And mind you, you still have National Park Police out there. You still got Secret Service out there. A lot of those federal buildings got Secret Service agents and U.S. Capitol Police standing on the roof with guns and everything else like that, even though they didn't do nothing on January 6th. But, all kind of surveillance cameras, everything. You mean to tell me that somebody magically went up there and then knew that if they would slice the concrete at the bottom of the reflecting pool, that the paint would just peel like wallpaper? The way that they, oh my God, the lie. What did Candy say? The lies, just the silliness of it. And it's like the lies don't even make sense. You just be like, what the hell sometimes? The reality is they half did the work, right? They did not do the proper preparation of that ground floor or whatever before they painted everything. Because again, let's show you what they were doing, before we got to the actual, that is not the video I want. Hold on, give me my video. Shoot, hold on, I gotta pull it from a different folder. Okay, this is what I want. All right. Anyway, sorry, didn't have that ready. So let me show, let's go to what they were doing as far as preparing. Because again, if you're gonna drain a reflecting pool, one, you gotta make sure everything is dry, right? And then they're gonna have to do all the preparation and put in the little chemicals and stuff, and then they have to make sure there's no cracks or anything, because if there's any cracks in that concrete, when the water goes in, even if they painted anything, if any kind of water can get under that crack, then the pressure of more water trying to force its way into the crack gets in there, and then before you know it, everything starts to lift up, right? Happens. That's just reality, right? We learned that in science class in high school. But anyway, let's take a look at how they were preparing the area before they painted, right? This is the presidential motorcade driving on top of the reflecting pool after it's dried out. Like this all here, this is where the water normally is. So they decided they're just going to drive on it. I didn't need the sound. They're going to drive over it because, again, he needs to make an entrance. So let's get the motorcade. Let's get these SUVs that are armored, that are a bit heavier than normal cars because they got all the bulletproof windows and everything else like that. So, he can't ever stage an assassination attempt and fake it with the cars at least. But yeah, so they're going to let's drive on the reflecting pool, right? Let's drive on it. There's no telling how many pebbles and grains that the tires pick up before they got to the reflecting pool, and how those little rocks and pebbles and stones and maybe a nail or a screw go and scrape the surface of that ground. There's no telling how much oil had dripped out of, I'll run that back. There's no telling, how much oil was dripping out of the exhaust or gas and all the different chemicals. Because if there's any oil that lands on that space and none of that has been dried and properly, dismantled with, or they've gotten rid of it before they painted, then of course that paint is not going to sit at all. So again, they half did the painting. The painting wasn't even, right? Some sides got more coats than others. Some sides had it wasn't even the same blue. They just half did it. They spent, apparently, it was supposed to be $1.4 million to get it done. They spent $14 or $16 million. And literally 1 week after everything was done, you got the algae, and by the next week, now the paint is peeling. So then they paint this narrative of, oh no, it's fraud. There's people out there, I'm surprised he didn't say Antifa, going out there with a knife and cutting 250 feet, cutting it, just everything. To the point where, if you were at the reflecting pool this past weekend, you saw an overabundance of park police, the National Guard, because again, they don't have anything to do in this city yet. I think we have 4,000 National Guards in DC right now, and they're all bored to death because there's not that much crime happening out here. So they're landscaping, they're dumping trash. Now they got to watch the reflecting pool and make sure nobody goes in there with a knife to cut anything. They're petting dogs and everything. And you almost feel bad for them because, I feel some kind of way, but I will speak if they speak just to be nice. They'll say, hello, good afternoon. And I'm like, damn, y'all are down bad. Y'all just bored to death. Hello, how you doing? Keep it moving, right? Yeah, so you got them out there. So they're trying to find every reason to arrest people. So the 6 people that were arrested were not arrested because, apparently there's no evidence of these arrests. But what was said, there was no arrest because somebody was caught vandalizing. People were threatened with arrest if they were caught picking up one of the floating pieces of paint that was already in the water. I said, now y'all can't even touch the water, which is interesting because when I saw Forrest Gump, when Jenny was there and he was doing that Vietnam speech, Forrest, right? She was in that water, just they run into the water and they hug and everybody laughs. That ain't happening no more. So for those of you who may have a long lost one that you think got away and you think you're gonna have your moment at the reflecting pool and y'all are gonna embrace, you're going to jail if you get in the water. Okay, just the lies. It reminds me. Let me side note. There was this time my little brother, my mom had just done the laundry. And so when my mom was taking the clothes out the dryer, my brother had this t-shirt that was like just ripped into all these pieces, like just shredded. And my mom was like, Marcus, why is this shirt that I bought all shredded up like this? And Marcus was like 8. He was like, I grew out of it. Like my mom was, oh, so you just the Incredible Hulk? Because Marcus said it as if he stood there and just, and the clothes just started ripping him because he just got so buff. Like, that's how silly all of this sounds. Just acknowledge, y'all didn't do it right because y'all have to everything. In the same way where I know for sure with that ballroom, y'all did not do all the surveying and everything else before you just tore that ballroom down to build this new one that's not going to ever be done for the next 8 years. I have a count now. It is 2026. I'm telling you right now, we won't see that ballroom finished until at least 2034. I'm going to just write it down. That's when I think it'll get done. And it won't happen under his watch. But anyway, you watch them just have to do so many things. So what makes you think that they're going to take the effort to actually listen to the experts who would have told you how to do whatever with that reflective pool and what to not paint it or so on and so forth and how to do it? Do you think they're going to take the time to listen to that if they wouldn't even do it for a ballroom on a White House, a landmark that has been there for however many hundreds of years and decades and so on and so forth, and you just watch them just bulldoze it without a care in the world? You think they're going to put effort into a reflecting pool? No. So now when everything falls apart, well, now we need a boogeyman. Yeah, it's somebody went in there with a knife and walked 250 feet. They walked 250 feet dragging his knife and just slicing the ground, and the paint just peeled. Oh, my God. Make it make sense. Jeez Louise. the next time y'all put in a president that ain't too bright, can we at least get like George Bush stupid, not Trump stupid? But Bush was terrible, but at least Bush, the kind of stupidity Bush had was something you could work around a little bit. He at least knew to have smart people around him. Now, I still think he was a terrible president, but I will happily go back to that foolery than this here, right? My God. Oh, they vandalize it. Who cares about a reflecting? Who wants to vandalize a reflecting pool? Right? It's a pretty sight. It's something everybody would actually enjoy. Right? He's saying it as if he put a giant mural of himself on the wall and somebody went and sliced that up. Now I might go do that. But like a reflecting pool, nobody has smoke with water. Who has smoke with water? That water's pissing me off. I'm gonna get a knife and just. What's wrong with y'all? Like, my God. Somebody said all of our tax money going to that dumb pool. Right. Going to a whole lot of other stuff too. The whole UFC fight. We done paid for them to fight and punch each other on the White House lawn. Somebody said Handmaid's Tale gets depressing and does hit more and more by the day. IDK if it's the testament since I ran across the spoilers. The show I've been watching, this is left field. I just discovered the morning show when I was on one of my flights. It was, you know how the flights that they have in-flight entertainment, they you can watch the different shows, and so I saw that one. I was like, let me check this one out. So I started watching that one. I was like, okay, this one's actually interesting. And I think what's weird about it is I didn't realize it was from 2019 to the present. And so as I'm watching this show years later, the show dives into things that actually did happen in real time, like the pandemic or what was happening politically. And it kind of just reminds you of just where we were some years back. I'm like, wow, that's a lot. Let me just tell this person I'm on live. Yeah, so that's kind of what I've been watching. And I'm like, okay, interesting. Because right now they're in the pandemic on the show. So I'm like, okay, because I'm only in like season 2. So that's interesting. Somebody said poor duckies. Yeah, the little baby ducks done died. And this is my favorite time of the year because all the Canadian geese and the ducks got the babies walking around. I used to never see Canadian geese. I just always saw them as adults. So I never saw their babies. And then one day, I was walking somewhere and I saw, whatchamacallit, it was like the mama was there and it was like 10 babies. And they were like, they must have been like a day old. I don't know. I don't know how the cycle works with Canadian geese, but they were like this big. And they just walking. I was like, oh, that's so cute. Anyway, let's see. Somebody said, y'all think these are his ideas or his handlers? Because that's the dumbest ish I heard. With Orange Man, I definitely think there's a lot of people behind the scenes that are pulling strings like Stephen Miller. And even though Peter Thiel has jumped and ditched out and went to Argentina now, he done destroyed the country. Now he want to leave. I think there's a lot of people behind the scenes that tell him what to do, but he also doesn't listen to anybody. He moves on impulse. So it's a combination of both to me. Like it's his bright ideas with the combination of other people who are actively working to do different things too. So it's a bit of everything. Somebody said, Calvin, what kind of box cutter is that? Let us know. I don't know, right? Somebody said, can you just keel over already? Just y'all know I'd be, boy, if you follow me on social media, you know what I'd be saying and hoping for every day. I said, Calvin, you got to show the person who was awarded the no bid contract. You know what? Good idea. Let's find out who that is real quick. Let's do some little research here. No bid contract. Oh, good. Who was that? That was I lost the spot. Roy Naw 7902. Great suggestion. Of course, company owned by Trump donor. Let's see here. We're gonna share the screen real quick. That was a great suggestion. See, that's why I love my channel, because we move as a unit around here. Company owned by Trump donor, contract, blah, 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 federal records. Okay, what's the name of it? Okay, to install the nanobubble filtration system went to Green Water Solutions, an Ohio-based company whose owner is listed on federal contracting documents as J.J. Cafaro Investment Trust. The president and CEO of the trust is identified as John Cafaro. Ooh, let's see what John looks like. John, what you look like? He's probably, silly me, he's right here. John, now what in a cartoon character Disney movie is happening here? This alone tells me everything I need to know. Everything I need to know. Let me zoom in. Everything I need to know. This is a thick comb over. Look, you can see where the toupee starts. Look, you can see it starts right here. Because all this is all sunspots right here under this. Yeah. What are we doing? He looked like, this is kind of like that anime kind of criminal you see on TV. Like, he looks like a scammer, right? This is something like, what's a show? What's a good, this is real Scooby-Doo, and I would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for you meddling teenagers. Like, what? Get out of here. Federal contracting records show that the company received one other government contract, $1 million in 2025 for a feasibility study on using its nanobubble system to treat sewage flows in the Tijuana River. Green Water Solutions also appears to do work on Trump Organization property. On its LinkedIn page, the company posted photos of water treatment work it performed on a pond at the President's Golf Club in Bedminster, New Jersey, more than a year ago. They've been hired to take on the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool. Boy. You know what? Too easy. I'd like to see heaven. Because what are we doing? Okay. Great suggestion, by the way. That was a great suggestion. Somebody said at some point you just have to laugh. You really do. You really do. Somebody said this pool is way too high. You need to cut it. Right. Let's see. Somebody said, why the heck were they driving on it? What's wrong with them? Like, I've never heard of that. Who decided, look, we're going to drive on it. What are we driving on a reflected pool? And he's always done that. You know, he loves to have a big, like, mojo, ego entourage. When I tell you, it's so annoying sometimes being in DC. Even, like, getting out of work today, I guess he had a rally today. So certain segments of the city, certain roads and stuff are blocked off. You got to go this way or go that way if you're driving. That crap is annoying. Especially when it's like the motorcade stuff. Sometimes, like, you know, you might be doing something, but then all the streets are blocked. You can't go here or go there for a few minutes. It can be annoying sometimes. I mean, it's cool when you actually like who the president is. You be excited, hey, when they drive past. But when it's somebody you can't stand, you go like, right? Somebody said they claim Democrats did this. Oh, speaking up, did you see the press conference where when they were talking to him about the budget, the first thing he did was bring up Obama? He still has something to say about Obama and the reflecting pool when Obama was president. Like, man, somebody said, actually, Calvin, they are blaming Antifa. Oh, okay. You know, Antifa, Antifa just never stops. It's silly. My God. Somebody said he looks like Danny DeVito as the Penguin in Bat. Oh, Lord. I don't even mean to cook nobody, but can we go back? Because that's just that one was too easy. That one there, I didn't know he was gonna look like that. Let me go back. Y'all know I don't speak on people's looks and nothing like that, because all it takes is one car accident, you don't know what happens. But 2 a.m. infomercial. But again, it's not even how he like this. This is just how every average person looks. I'm talking about all of this right here and whatever's going on right here. This is a lot. It's like The Simpsons. Like, I feel like if you open this coat, it's gonna be like a bunch of candy that falls out. Remember that time on The Simpsons when Marge had all that candy and she was stealing it out of the store? Like, I feel like that's what we're getting here. Like, that's a very animated, cartoonish looking kind of. It doesn't even look real. Just like House 23 just said. Like, what is happening here? Yeah, wait. Listen, if I ever bald, listen. The man piece that I'm gonna have, that it's gonna blend in so you're not even gonna be able to tell. Otherwise, I'm gonna just shave it all off. I think I can pull off being bald. I got a lot of forehead. I don't know. Let's just pray the genetics continue geneticking. Let's see. Calvin, did I attend Afram? I certainly did. I talked about it in the beginning of the live. So when we start, well, when the live is finished, I talk about Afram in the beginning. So just go back and revisit it when this live wraps. Let's see. That is a lot. Okay, that got me so distracted. That was a great suggestion for the person that said it. Okay, let's talk about Iran for a quick second. The Senate I'm not even gonna read this article. I'm just gonna go with my notes because we've done a lot of reading today. So we know that the Senate has finally passed a War Powers Resolution Act, right? It had passed in the House a few times, but it kept failing in the Senate for weeks and weeks and weeks. And so it finally passed 50 to 48. Now, in addition to that, what makes it wild is that the Pentagon is still seeking another $80 billion for this war. The war's initial cost was supposed to be about $11.3 billion. It's currently already more than $100 billion. On top of that $1.5 trillion budget that Trump proposed for fiscal year 2027, where we went over everything. Remember, it was the $1.5 trillion, and we went down that list of all the cuts that were going to be made in order to make that $1.5 trillion happen. So again, Pentagon is asking for $80 billion on top of the $1.5 trillion proposed in that budget that has not passed yet. And then in addition to that, when the Big Beautiful Bill passed in 2025, that also added an additional $175 billion for the military. On top of, based on what's happening with this Iran deal, if it actually makes it through, because they fight and go back and forth, that would be on top of the $300 billion that would go to rebuilding Iran. Now, from what I've been reading, they're saying that that would not specifically be funded by the United States, but it will be funded by the surrounding countries that are a part of that alliance, and it will be like a concerted effort by everybody to help rebuild. That's what's being said. But all I'll say is $300 billion versus the $1.7 billion everybody was mad at Obama for when it came to the Iran deal. Mind you, that $1.7 billion that Barack Obama gave Iran was their money anyway. It was money that we had been holding, that we had pretty much confiscated and said, you're not getting it back. They just got their money back. They got a refund, right? Man. And so anyway, he met with Republicans today to cuss them out, let everybody have it. Him and Cassidy have been going at it. Remember, Cassidy lost his primary, so he will not be in the Senate anymore. So of course, just like clockwork, once these people lose their positions of power and no longer have to worry about running for re-election, now this is when they want to act like they got some sense and stand up to Orange Man. So Cassidy and Orange Man were going at it back and forth. As far as the actual War Powers Resolution, which again, this is supposed to limit what the president can do, I don't see him following it, because to me, it seems like more of a ceremonial legislation at this point, because he's just done whatever he wanted anyway. And you know what I mean? Like, I don't see him listening to anything. When has he ever done something that he was told to do? Even with the Kennedy Center, judge orders them to take his name off the building and reinstate it. And what do? They wait until the very, 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 very last minute to take the name off. And then they put a big old top in front of it so nobody can see any of the names, right? He's always going to find a way. He just reminds me, I had a kid that I used to work with. This kid, I love that child dearly, but Lord, that child would drive you up a wall, because they always found a way around something. And they would still be wrong. They'd be like even more wrong than where they started. But it was like they just refused to learn. They, like, as far as like learn their lesson or correct themselves. And I mean, this kid drove us up a wall every day. And then it was so funny because one time, it was just a rough day. I'm tired. My coworkers are tired. The kids acting like they're crazy. We were doing like uptime, like what you call uptime, where it's like you're giving snack and announcements and everything. But the kids kept talking while I was trying to explain stuff. Then out of nowhere, the same kid. Now this kid done raised hell all day, right? To the point where literally what I'm addressing the entire group about is rooted with something that he did just 30 minutes earlier. And out of nowhere, he's like, I have to say this. When everybody was talking while Mr. Michael was talking, it made me so sad, because I could tell he was getting frustrated. And I'm like, but thank you, but at the same time, boy, them kids, I miss the kids so much sometimes. You used to have so many things that you can laugh about. But yeah. So that's Iran. Clive Davis has passed on. I'll say this, because I saw the clip that Jermaine Dupri posted where he was saying he really, really, really hopes that the BET Awards, which I believe is this weekend, he hopes that they go all out for Clive Davis and just really just give him his flowers and do the work. And he went on about how Clive used to throw these parties and how he's done all this for blah, 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 blah. And mind you, I'm sitting here looking like, and I said this on Instagram, like Juneteenth ain't even cooled off yet. And y'all already trying to get everybody else a piece of, okay. As far as Clive, multiple things can be true at once. in one aspect, he was pivotal in launching the careers of many Black entertainers that we love. The main one that most people are always going to think about is going to be Whitney, right? He worked with Aretha at one point. He worked with Dion at one point. He's pretty much, he's the reason the 50-50 joint venture he had, that's what created Bad Boy and gave us all of the Bad Boy artists, right? He technically is how we ended up getting LaFace Records and all of the greats, which would lead to the Tonys and the TLCs and the Ushers and Sierras and everybody else who was on LaFace back in the day. Like all of that, yes, that is one piece. But another piece of the conversation is the fact that a lot of people, as far as artists, were screwed over by a lot of his antics, a lot of his business practices. A lot of people lost out on money. We saw the Toni Braxton story with her being $3.7 million in debt by the time she dealt with the crappy deal that she had with both LaFace and then Clive at the top, and everything that was happening with the Secrets tour. If you want more insight, you can always watch my So What Happened on Toni Braxton from the Heat to Libra, right? We talked about that. We saw what happened with TLC and their money. I think I talked about theirs on the TLC So What Happened. I can't remember. I think that one I just jumped right from fan mail to 3D. Yeah, but we saw TLC and the debt that they had. We saw kind of what happened with Kelly Clarkson with the My December album. We saw Phyllis Hyman, who, mind you, she was on a totally different label, and then his label bought her label, and then she ended up on the label, and he never really wanted to push her because he was pushing the other artists. And, we can be here all day. My point is, to me, Clive is representative of the music industry, of the business. There are going to be the highs where there's going to be some great outcomes, but there's a lot of lows. And there's a lot of shady business dealings, and there's a lot of hurt feelings. There's a lot of people who lose their livelihood. There's a lot of people who end up broke or owe the label. There's people who get screwed over to the point where even some of the fraudulent things he did in the past, he got fired from his label back in the day, and I almost got arrested, right, for utilizing company funds doing some other stuff. And then, of course, the biggest concern I always had was around Whitney, because I just felt that Whitney was not ready to go on that last tour. And it seems like she was, to me, I just always felt like she was pushed into it. Now, Whitney has her own agency to do whatever she wants, but the pressures of the industry, she wasn't ready. But, I just was like, Jermaine Dupri, if there's anybody that we need to honor at the BET Awards, to me, that would be Clarence Avant, right? In order for us, and I get it, BET is really not this pinnacle of Black media. It hasn't been since 2001, since it got sold, right? It's owned by whoever and God knows who at this point. So I don't have a lot of expectations, but it's still marketed as something that is ours or something that celebrates us. So why would we adjust an entire award show for this man? It's not to take, because the reality is, because he's Clive Davis, every music entity is going to honor him. Rolling Stone is going to probably take out a big article that's 50 pages about his the whole edition will probably be about him in their next edition, right? The Grammys are definitely going to give Clive this massive tribute because he's had the Grammy party for years and years and years, even to the point where Whitney's body's still upstairs and they dancing downstairs. AMAs are going to give probably something. ASCAP awards are going to give something. BMI is going to probably give something. Every music entities, there's going to be schools of music that rename their buildings after him and everything like that. So for the BET Awards, which is something he has never attended from my understanding, why should that weight fall on the one night where Black artists get some element of viable visibility? Because we don't have the Soul Train Awards anymore. We literally just have BET Awards. That's it. That's and Black Music Honors, but that's usually, I think, online, right? So it's already a limited space. There's already gonna be a lot of people who don't get represented or get seen. Nothing against Clive Davis, but I don't believe that the BET Awards is the platform to honor Clive Davis and give him this, that, and the third. Because half the time there's a lot. To backtrack, when Left Eye and Aaliyah died, there was no. Well, to be fair to BET, Aaliyah died. Well, the first BET Awards was June of 2001. Aaliyah dies that August, and then Left Eye dies that April. So the following BET Awards, Left Eye and Aaliyah got a joint video 40-second voiceover tribute as they were going to commercial. That was Left Eye, that was Aaliyah, right? That was their tribute. There's some people who they forgot about a few times. I don't think they did something for Donna Summer when she passed. I can't remember. I don't want to put that out there if I'm wrong, but I don't remember there being anything for Donna Summer when she passed. There's been many who unfortunately don't get these massive tributes that they deserve. So the idea of pulling Clive just because he's the businessman, I don't know. I don't agree with that. So I don't know what Jermaine Dupri's on, because and that's the thing you speak out on. Okay. All right. Cool. Go ahead. And we saw what happened the last time they tried to adjust an award show last minute, right? Remember, Michael died on the 25th, which was a Thursday, and sadly, 3.5 days later was the BET Awards, and they tried their best to rearrange the show, and it still was, to me, all over the place. And to be fair, that's not an easy task. So if they couldn't get it right for Michael Jackson, the idea of thinking that Clive is going to get this grand send-off, be for real. Anyway, Natalie Cole, that's one that they skipped. But I will say they did give Natalie Cole an excellent tribute at BET Honors, because Ledisi did I've Got Love and This Will Be, and it's an amazing vocal. She's amazing. So I will give them that credit. Yeah, Clive got Jermaine. No, like I said, Juneteenth ain't even cooled off yet. People still got sodas in the cooler in the garage from Juneteenth weekend, and you already doing all this for okay. Oh my God. Okay, speaking of, well, let me go ahead and stick with Whitney anyway. And then I want to get to Lizzo. Because I did see Oprah's catching some smoke, because she had this story where she was talking about, when Whitney went on the Oprah show back in 2009 to promote the I Look to You album. Oprah was pretty much stating that Whitney Houston was not off of the substances, and she fell, and everybody had their phones, and she had to beg and plead with the crowd not to release the footage because, it's important for this, that, and third. And she randomly tells this story. And so, of course, it brings out a lot of people who are like, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. And the main reason is because Oprah has told this story before, but the context was different. So let's go to the context, because what I love about media is that you can just always go to archives. Now, this is from May 15th of 2021. Oprah reveals Whitney Houston once fell off her stage by accident, not from drugs. Again, May 16th, 2021. Clive Davis's Zoom gala to benefit the Grammy Museum is in progress, and it's amazing, of course. In a rare interview, Oprah, who appeared to talk about Tina Turner, revealed something she says no one knows. When Clive brought Whitney to her show for the late career appearance, Whitney, who was trying hard to stage a comeback, fell off the stage. It was not drugs, Oprah said, and Clive agreed. She slipped, but it unnerved Whitney so that she had to take a break to regroup. During the break, Oprah begged the audience to keep it secret. Why is this thing freezing? Then this website been froze. Oh, let me go back. All right, it's just a website. Let me refresh this. Act like you got some sense. Okay, maybe not. Either way. Okay, now it's working. All right. All right. To this day, just make sure this still works. Okay. To this day, I've never read or heard anyone say it, said Oprah. Whitney, by the way, returned to the stage and got a standing ovation. She triumphed over the accident. Wow, it's going to be a long night of revelations. Clive just admitted his two favorite songs of all time are The Boxer and Bridge Over Troubled Water. I don't think this has anything else to do with the story. Okay, so that's pretty much it. So again, in 2021, you're telling this story that, she just kind of slipped and fell, and apparently was doing sound check or something like that, and everything, and she came back out. Now we fast forward to 2026. You're telling the same story, but now the context is changing. You're saying, okay, because she was on drugs and she hadn't cleaned herself up, and then the people out there with the smartphones were recording it, and they just needed everybody to not, spread this out. And they all kept the secret. And so my thing is, well, if they all kept the secret, well, why did you tell it? Right? What was the end goal here? And I think when it comes to Whitney, it's just interesting because we already know she struggled. We saw it with the way that she went in past. We knew it was no secret, right? So it's always interesting that people love to harp on Whitney and her substance abuse problem. But then what I don't get is we have entertainers who spend all day rapping about Percocets and rapping about pills and being on lean and doing this, that, and the third. And it's normalized because society has kind of shifted the way that they view drugs, and especially as like a recreational thing. But for some reason, when it comes to Whitney Houston, we go back to re-encapsulating the thought process of drug use in the 90s and the 80s, and we still associate that with how people view Whitney Houston. And so Whitney Houston is just a drug addict by default, But everybody else in the modern era who celebrates and makes music about this, it's the norm. So I just find that interesting. But I also don't understand why Oprah decided that was going to be a story to tell. And it's not to erase what it is that Whitney battled with, right? She was upfront with it. She said, yeah, sometimes it was cocaine, sometimes it was weed, sometimes it was this. I worked through it. I tried. I did my best, so on and so forth. So at some point, I'm like, what are you supposed to gain at this point in that conversation? Maybe I need to watch the full interview or whatever it was that you was saying. But again, to contradict yourself in one space, you present what you're saying as if she passed out because she wasn't clean yet. But years earlier, you said it's just because she stumbled and got nervous. Make up your minds, people. I want to stick with this music conversation, and I actually want to go to Lizzo. This is going to be a little bit of a longer conversation. I already talked about Lizzo on the last live, but the conversation got bigger, and I was like, maybe I could go a little bit more in depth. I almost was going to make this a separate music talk episode, but I'm trying to finish my So What Happened episode, so priorities. All right. Anyway, so Lizzo recently came out with an album, and the album sold 2,649 copies. And, you know, so it's been getting all of this press, and people are having their think pieces and so on and so forth. Here are my thoughts, right? The first thing is, one, she is not an anomaly in this, because at this point, everybody's flopping. Everybody is flopping. Right? It's the norm, right? To the point where a lot of artists aren't even emphasizing their focus on sales anymore. And it's more so, let me just focus on the tour, because there's been a lot of artists who have also dropped albums that are still selling decently, but may not be as a part of the conversation in the way that they were during previous eras. Because even like a Bruno, like the Bruno album is doing decently, but you're not really hearing a lot about the album, right? You're not really hearing a lot about the songs, but you're hearing about the tour. Like a lot of artists, their focus is now the tours, these stadium tours, these big arena tours. They drop their album, good luck. We'll push a song or two, but there's the expectation and understanding that people just are not checking for albums right now from certain artists, right? But I also think the toughest lesson in all of this is the reality is also that longevity in music is an anomaly, right? Not everybody is going to get more than 10 years. Some people don't get more than 5. And I think that's one of the reasons why when we talk about legends, you notice we talk about the same cohort of entertainers, especially when it comes to Black women who had somewhat of a significant pop audience. There's only so many that we're going to talk about. That's, you know, that's Beyonce, that's Janet, that's Whitney, that's Mariah, Diana, Dion, Aretha, Tina, Alto Donna in there, Brandy, Tony. I'm trying to think of the really, really big crossover multi-platinum albums artists. There's only so many when we're talking, like, especially with Black women in music, right? And I think that's why we end up getting things like the term legend, because those are the people who not only had these phenomenal careers, but they, you know, did things that most people who come into this business just aren't going to do, right? I think the word legend gets used too frequently now. But going back to what I was saying, the idea of longevity is just not Patty. Let's throw Patty in there too. Yes, Patty, Natalie, Gladys, and a lot of them. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Okay, but anyway, going back to what I was saying, when it comes to Black women in music, especially those that are, again, that have more of a significant size pop audience, right? The longevity is a rarity because the industry is already fickle. Like the industry is designed to work as long as there's public interest, but public interest only is maintained as long as the machine is doing its machine thing. So even when it comes to white women, think of like a Katy Perry. Just a few years ago, Katy was the biggest, maybe not a few years, it's been a good minute now. If we're talking like 2009 to about 2014-ish, Katy had a great run, right? A good 5-6 year run. By the time you get to 2017, she's still around, but it's slowing down drastically. And now today, she's really not a part of the conversation at all, right? Same thing with like a Jessica Simpson. If we go back even further, there was a period where Jessica became this massive star, even after her teen pop star years. So when she gets with Nick Lachey, they have the reality show. She has the album with the Take My Breath Away and all that. Big. Literally one album era later, right? The machine has changed. She's not with Nick Lachey anymore. She's not on TV every week. Public opinion about her is changing. That album comes out. It doesn't really do that well. Then she tries to go country. They drag the lady because she had this pair of mom jeans on and they were trying to say that she was fat. Mind you, she might have been like a size 6, right? And you watch the public discourse around her career just abruptly shift. the industry only works in your favor when you have the machine behind you. And I think one of the other things too that's worked against Lizzo right now is there's also the bad press that has come from the allegations that were made about her and the misconduct. And again, when it comes to pop audiences are not forgiving unless you are a white male. When women in the music industry, especially Black women, get any kind of smoke, get any kind of bad publicity, pop audiences jump ship right away, right? But I want to go a little bit deeper. Let's go to logistics, right? With this current project that Lizzo has, there wasn't a lot of radio play, right? She didn't make it on a lot of the syndicated radio playlists. There wasn't a lot of curated playlists as far as Spotify and everything else like that. There weren't a lot of endorsements, and she's also not on tour, which means that the only way that her music is getting out there is through the diehard fans, which I'm going to come back to. But again, most of the general public had no idea she even had a project out. And the other thing is, she technically hasn't had a hit on the chart since 2023. And if you're not including the song that is on the Cardi album with the What's Going On, it has like the 4 Non Blondes reference. Other than, and that peaked at 63 on the charts. And that's, to me, that doesn't even really count. Because, you know, at this point, when big artists like, you know, a Cardi or, you know, ASAP or some of these people come out with their albums, they'll have all their songs chart that first week on the Hot 100, and then they fall off the charts. So to me, I'm like, yeah, this is the era of streaming, and it's a mess. But yeah, so if you're an artist who has not had a significant presence on the charts for 3 years in an industry, and you've been pushed as a pop artist with that whole pop machine, again, like I said, pop audiences are fickle. And so she's had just really, unfortunately, not a lot of buzz. There's been 3 singles that they've tested. They just haven't really caught on. And so going back to the pop audiences are fickle. The thing about being a pop artist, and the reason I keep saying that is because when Lizzo came out, Lizzo was not pushed or rooted specifically as a rapper or an R&B singer. She was pushed straight into the pop machine. There's not a lot of artists who get that entrance into music. I'd say Deborah Morgan was one. If you remember her from 2000, she had the Dance With Me song. She's one that I think they pushed her straight into pop, where she wasn't seen as R&B. They went straight into pop. And then, you know, you have a Whitney and Janet, but Whitney and Janet were rooted in R&B, but crossed over into pop, but still also were saturated in R&B. They had the best of both worlds. When Lizzo was pushed out, she was pushed as a pop artist that just happened to rap. Like when you talk to rap heads, they're not like, oh, let's put on that Lizzo album right after we play some Lil' Kim. Like it's more of she's this universal artist that can do everything, including rap. So to me, she's looked at in the same way people look at Doja Cat. Like I don't think people in the hip hop world look at Doja Cat as like a rapper. They look at her as an all-around entertainer that can do a little bit of everything, right? So going back to what I was saying, in the pop world, as far as the marketing machine, in order to build a fan base, because I don't think Lizzo had a solidified fan base, pop artists, especially in the heyday of the music industry, when they're really like pushing it and people were selling 10 and 20 million records, unfortunately, pop artists had to constantly put out content, like constantly, because again, the general public's attention span is short, and pop audiences are fickle. So when you look at like Britney, NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, even Rihanna and the Spice Girls, look at how much was put out quickly. When you're talking Rihanna, you know, Rihanna's first album was 05, the next album was 06, the next album was 07, then they did a re-release, and then the next album was 09, then the next album was in 2010, and then 2011 she had an album, and then 2012 or 2013 was Unapologetic. She had like 8 albums in like 9 years. The longest break she had before the one she's on now was like, what, 3 or 4 years between Unapologetic and Anti? And so it's like you're constantly pushing and pushing and pushing singles. Same thing with Britney, right? Britney comes out the first album at the end of 98. The next album comes out at the top of 2000. The next album comes out in 2001. There's a few little singles here and there. And then here comes the next album in 2003-ish, I want to say. And so that's just kind of a thing that had always been done, where, again, what happens is after these artists have several consistent, successful projects, now they somewhat have a solidified fan base that's now going to rock with them no matter what. And they're no longer fans just as a response to the pandemonium. And so I think Rihanna's a perfect example of that, where at this point, Rihanna hasn't really put out a lot of music, but she's still one of the most streamed artists in the world. Britney, I don't think she'll ever put music out again, but she has a diehard loyal fan base, where Britney, even in her current state, today were to announce that she was going on an arena tour, with the right promotion and buzz and maybe a good opening act, she could probably still sell out arenas even today, right? Because of the bulk load of consistent releases that also were successful at the same time, where she has been able to build an audience, right? And again, even with Britney, think of how many like Britney-esque entertainers were thrown out there once she came out. Even American Idol, and I'm so glad I found this because I mentioned this before, but I needed the example. Britney was so big at one point where even when we talk about American Idol and how it was marketed, I want you all to look at this really quick. Let me share the screen. Take note of, that is not what I clicked on. Okay, yep. All right. Take note of, I turned the sound off. Towards the end of this commercial, this is a commercial ad in 2002 for American Idol before it ever aired, right? This is when they were still just letting us know what was coming. Look at this silhouette you keep seeing in the red. What does that, and who does that remind you of, right? Show the silhouette, right? Okay, get back to the silhouette. This is a fast commercial. Right here, what are we looking at, right? Even the idea of what American Idol initially marketed itself as when they were saying who was going to be the next superstar, it wasn't the idea of an adult contemporary balladeer like what we ended up getting with the winners. With it was centered on like singing. If you're looking at the imaging of just how that was presented, that is a very Britney-esque. So I'll play it again one more time. You know, it's very Britney-esque, right? Let me open that one more time. And I'm just going to go to the part that I want to reference again. So again, when we come back to this, when you're looking at that and this clip is playing, this is very Britney Spears. Hair flipping, blonde, bangs, tank top, little bit of cleavage at the top. That is all Britney. So when it came to, again, the pop world in music, whatever was trendy, whatever was popular, everybody has to hop on it, and the machine just spits it out and keeps pushing it out there until it, doesn't work anymore, right? The perfect example, if we want to talk, again, that idea of pushing and maintaining momentum. Again, the argument is that when it comes to pop success, and I'm specifically harping on pop because, in my opinion, Lizzo was pushed as a pop artist that happens to rap, that also can do R&B, but she was pushed as pop. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just painting the picture of the industry, right? If we go to the Jackson 5, who to me, even though they are a Black soulful group, their peak, they were pop artists, right? Because of just how massive they were. But when you look at the amount of output and how fast they move, I just want to do some numbers here, right? December of 1969, the first album comes out. That's the Diana Ross Presents the Jackson 5. May of 1970, not even 6 months later, ABC, the album comes out. September of 1970. Okay, we just went from December of 69 with the first album, May of 70 with the second album, September of 1970 with the third album. October of 1970, boom, here comes the Christmas album. April of 71, here comes Maybe Tomorrow. And then December of 71 is the Greatest Hits. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 albums in 2.5 years. They enter the scene. There's pandemonium. They get 4 number ones right off the bat. Their very first tour is an arena tour. They're not even doing they're not nobody's opening act. They're not doing the State Fair circuit. That's why I was saying in the movie it was weird that they were at the State Fair. Their first concerts were at the Forum. They were doing Madison Square Garden on day one, right? They were a movement. However, when we get to 72, 73, there's a slowdown where they're no longer dropping 2 and 3 projects in a 15-month period. Now it's like 1 album a year. The minute that took place, that's when you start to see a slowdown, right? But you get looking through the window and that kind of does okay. And then between like 72 to almost 75, they're missing the top 10 with most of their singles. There's a handful, like they have a Greatest Hits album that has Sugar Daddy, that goes to number 10. But a lot of the singles that came after, like Get It Together or Leave It Alone, a lot of those songs didn't really do much. And they were in a dry spell until Dancing Machine comes out. And that has to go to the argument of the fact that when you're talking about that pop machine, there has to be constant output because the audience wants more and more and more and more and more. So when you do take a break to try to enhance your craft or whatever, anything else like that, it tends to work against you. Now with the Jacksons, to be fair, they were beefing with the label. The label was really difficult. Motown had this rule where, they had the factory. If they didn't believe a song was going to land, it wasn't going to come out. So even when the Jacksons left Motown, or Jackson 5 left Motown, Motown had this catalog of music that was never released because the Jacksons recorded so much material. And then Motown was still able to eat off of them years later, just releasing a bunch of unreleased material. But going back to what I was saying, so when you're talking about, and again, the Jacksons would regroup and pick it back up when they signed with CBS, and now they had creative control to do what they wanted to do. And, the rest is history. You get the Destiny Tour, you get the Triumph Tour, which is my favorite. You get the Victory Tour and everything else like that. The Triumph album goes double platinum. I think Victory went double platinum. So, they picked it back up. But the initial pop machine, pandemonium, maintain the momentum. They had it in the beginning. As soon as there was a slowdown, fickle pop audience, general public, attention goes elsewhere. What do you mean there's only one Jackson 5 album coming out this year? And what if we don't like the song? Okay, well, that's the end of that. And then more time is in between the albums. But getting back to my point, because she was pushed as a pop artist that just also happens to rap and also can kind of do R&B, I think it's been harder for her to find a solidified foundation of a fan base. And what I mean by that is, if you were to take like a Mariah Carey, I said this on my So What Happened with Mariah. Mariah had the best of three worlds: adult contemporary, pop, and R&B, specifically in that order, right? And she leaned into all three of those sounds equally, where she was able to get the best of all of those worlds. And I'll say maybe by the time you got to the Butterfly album, she shifted a little bit more R&B. We kind of lost some of the adult contemporary spaces, but she'd come to it when she wanted to. But I'd say like the perfect examples of her leaning into all three equally would have been like the Music Box in the Daydream eras, right? Where it's a little bit of everything. She just works all three, right? And so same thing with like a Toni Braxton. Hers was R&B, adult contemporary, and pop in that order. And I would say the perfect example of that would have been the Secrets era, where, you know, she can cross into pop, but she can still pull her R&B base. So yes, Unbreak My Heart is going to be the big song on the album. But if you go to the R&B fans and ask them what is their favorite song on Secrets, most people, it's not going to be Unbreak My Heart, unfortunately. We love that song, but folks are going to say, you know, Let It Flow, or I Love Me Some Him, or maybe even Talking in the Sleep. You know, those will be the ones. So I say all that to say, those are examples of artists who were able to solidify fan bases in the different spaces, because there was a concerted effort to make sure that if they're going to be an artist that can tap into multiple spaces, that they give it equal time. And I think with an R&B foundation, and a foundation in R&B can always give you stability, because R&B audiences are not really fickle. They will stick with you even during your slowdown years. So even if we talk about the Jacksons, when they did kind of have this, or the Jackson, let's go back to Jackson 5 real quick. So when we go to like 73 to 75, 76-ish before they go into become the Jacksons, when they're still the Jackson 5 and there's that massive slowdown, the hits that they're getting are with the R&B fans, right? And then, you know, when they regroup and everything and get a bigger audience again, now they kind of cross back out there. But a lot of times that R&B base tends to be a foundation that you can always kind of rely and fall back on. Like R&B gives you stability during your years of slowing down, where you can still be in the conversation and still actively work, still get your check, and still be in the industry without being pushed out, because pop is immediate. Once you fall off, you're done. So unfortunately, somebody like a Katy Perry, who is specifically pop, the pop songs aren't landing. Where else can she go? Nowhere. Not to be rude, but that's kind of the reality, right? And the thing about when you're an artist that's a bit more rooted or solidified in like the R&B space, it gives you time to evolve and experiment with your sound. But something like that doesn't exist with the pop machine, because pop doesn't allow. Pop, they want it now. Give it to us now. So even if we take Beyonce or Whitney Houston, people always say, okay, I'm Your Baby Tonight wasn't a massive hit, or Four wasn't a massive hit. But I would say that those are two albums that serve as a stepping stone to what would become Beyonce's Self-Titled or Lemonade, or Whitney with The Bodyguard, or even Usher's Here I Stand, serves as a stepping stone to what would become Raymond vs. Raymond, which would be his big commercial comeback, right? And I've said this about Janet before too. Had Janet's album been similar to what she was doing on Control and Rhythm Nation, she might have gone the same route as Paula Abdul, where people would have phased her out, where it's like, okay, your music is cool, but there's not any depth to it. Like, you notice by the time she gets to the Janet album and Velvet Rope, there's more layers to the music. It's not just ear candy for the radio, but it's now there's intention behind it. And mind you, Control and Rhythm Nation are lovely, lovely, lovely albums. Rhythm Nation is my second favorite Janet album behind Velvet Rope. But again, when you're talking that pop machine and the idea of building that artistry and creating that solidified foundation, something like the Janet album needed to happen in order for her to maintain the kind of stability that she would have as far as expanding her sound, which would explain why that's why the Janet tour becomes her biggest tour, where it's 7 legs, because there's that much demand. And so again, for somebody like a Janet, there needed to be layers in order for critics to respect her as an artist. And even in her darker years after the Super Bowl, which audience kept her afloat? It wasn't pop audiences, because she wasn't getting to play on pop radio. the records that she would sell of Demita Joe or Discipline and 21 bulk of that is R&B fans, right? And the fact that, again, I feel like Black audiences tend to hold on to their celebrities. So even when they have a slowdown, they may not be on the charts, but they're still a legend. Like Patti LaBelle, most of you can't name the last Patti LaBelle album that came out, but you know Patti is a legend, and you think the world of her. And when she comes to town, you're gonna pay to see her, right? Same thing like I just said about Charlie Wilson. Like Charlie still be racking up some R&B hits, to be honest. But you know, Charlie, I guess you can't sell out a free concert, but at Afram, place was packed out, people was enjoying themselves. The thing that I'm saying all this to say, when it comes to Lizzo, I'm just not sure if she ever solidified a fan base that is loyal. I think she had the pop audience's attention, but like I said, they are fickle and they move on to the next right away. And if you haven't really locked in with a different cohort of an audience, whether it's R&B, it can even be country, to be honest, or even for like rappers when it's like hip hop. If you've only had the pop exposure and the big massive success and everything else like that, and there's not that foundation that you can build out of, it is really hard to get back into good graces, because pop is just the industry, as far as the marketing, is just so fickle and so cutthroat and money oriented. Because for me, Lizzo should have at least been able to sell 20K. And I just based on the success that she's had and the fact she's done an arena tour, but it just kind of shows that so much has kind of changed. But again, it's not just her. I think there's so many people who, like, I just saw, I don't like this person at all. Kodak Black, I just saw his album debuted at 176 on the charts, right? Almost didn't make it. Yeah, the industry, there's a lot of folks who just aren't selling. I think so much has changed for various reasons. Radio is not as relevant as it once was, and radio just, again, syndicated playlists. If you can't get on one, you're out of luck. We're not watching music videos on TV, right? You're not getting music dropped off in your lap. Yeah, you can go and try to discover stuff on the streaming sites, but it's just a different industry. And again, like I said earlier, there's no guarantee that you're going to stay in the business forever, which is why when we start naming the legends, we always name the same cohort of 25 people every single time, because those are the people that were able to do it for, 20 years and so on and so forth. But that's it. Most people are lucky to have 3 albums do well, right? You're lucky if you get 3 albums. That's most of the industry. And those are the people who are successful. And so, we shall see where it goes. Let me read some comments because I've been talking for a minute. And then do I have anything else? Oh, I do want to talk about Jasmine for a second too. I got 3 more things to talk. Oh, I got a few more things. Okay, we gotta speed this up. All right. Let's see. I'm gonna just go to the comments here. Somebody said hush Jermaine Dupri. Somebody said Clive doesn't need a mention, because it's not to knock Clive, but this is our award show. Let us have our whatever, right? And the idea of centering a celebration of Black music and culture on, I'm gonna leave it alone. Y'all know where I'm going with this. All right. Anyway, let's keep it moving. Somebody said, what happened to resting in peace? They will not let Whitney do it. Beach Bra 24 or 247 said she had an album. That was my point. Most people didn't even know she had one. The only reason I knew she had any kind of project out is because she has that song that samples Sexy Lady, the Go-Go song. And I remember it was kind of getting a little backlash and some compliments. And so that's how I knew that she had something coming out. But if I didn't follow that story, I wouldn't have known either. Right? Man. Let's see. Okay, y'all are naming all the legends. Oh, that's a great example. I actually wrote that in my notes. Sade is an oddity to me. She pops up every decade like a siren and then disappears. And I'll say even with Sade, that's the perfect example. Sade was not pushed as pop. Sade was pushed as like an R&B, adult contemporary, jazz, acid jazz artist, right? Which has a very specific kind of audience where Sade can disappear for years. That band can take off. Like when they came back out in 2000, that was a moment, right? Especially because By Your Side was my song. And then they disappeared again for 9 years. And so when Soldier of Love came out and it sold 500,000 copies the first week. Let's pull it up. Soldier of Love first week sales. What do I have here? 502,000 copies after being gone for 9 years. That doesn't happen in pop because pop is for the moment, and it's just I look at pop as the transient genre of music. The other genres, whether it be rock, country, R&B, hip hop, jazz, gospel, folk, fan bases can sit and saturate with an artist long term. Pop is what is presented to us and thrown in our face all day, and so it's an ever evolving door of artists, unfortunately. And I've said that for many years on my So What Happened series, where I say for a lot of pop artists, if they're not able to either evolve or do something, a lot of times they only get about a 4 or 5 year run. And that's one of the reasons why labels tend to overwork them and they drop 50 albums in 3 and 4 years, right? Let's see. Somebody said, damn, Calvin remembers everything. That Jessica Simpson arc was summarized so well just now. And because that was a weird air to me, because I remember she came out with the Public Affairs song and I was like, oh, this is a nice song. I thought it was going to be a hit because it kind of has the Madonna, what song? Is that Holiday? Maybe it's Holiday. I think that it kind of has somewhat of a reference to, right? So I was like, oh, this is going to be a big song. And it had that Desperate Housewife lady in the video and she's in the skating rink. I was like, oh, yeah, this is going to be a big hit for Jessica. And it wasn't. I said, oh, wow. And then, it kept going. And I was like, oh, well, that's the end of Jessica. But yeah, pop is fickle. Let's see. Somebody said, I will always say the death of radio has combined to this as well. I totally agree. And I also think the death of regional radio, where radio, again, that national playlist, I think it has just sucked the life out of music. What used to be beautiful about regional radio is that a song could blow up in Charlotte, North Carolina, and spread. It starts going north. It hits Richmond, Virginia. It's going south. It hits Charleston, South Carolina. And then it finds its way to Atlanta. Atlanta's this big giant hub. If Atlanta's playing it, boom, here comes the rest of the South. But Houston's going to be a little difficult. Houston's like, we're going to do our own thing. But then Houston will jump on ship. And next thing you know, Houston starts playing and now it's going to spread everywhere else. And then it's just stuff used to spread. And that's why, if you were a child that grew up before maybe 2005, you remember if you've ever visited relatives in another city, you hear the radio and you hear all these songs you've never heard before because they weren't playing it in your town, right? That's not really a thing anymore unless you're doing independent radio, because now all the radio stations have the same playlist pretty much if they're owned by, it's not even Clear Channel anymore. iHeart is now the company, right? Oh, exactly. The King's Pajamas just said it. The only reason I knew she had an album coming is because the algorithm knew that as a DC native, I would want to know that she partnered with UCB to cover Sexy Lady. Yes, exactly. Speak on it. Somebody said Rihanna's run was insane. It really was. I used to be really tough on Rihanna back in the day, but now that I can look back, I'm like, yeah, she really was killing it for years. Just the consistency. But I mean, they were working her to death because album after album, and then she was still touring in between. I'm like, that's why Rihanna ain't coming out now. Rihanna said, look, I'm selling Fenty and I'm making way more than I ever did working as hard as I did. And I got 3 or 4 kids. I'm not coming back out. I'll give you a little ballad for a movie. Lift me up. And that's all you're going to get. Don't ask me for nothing else. And I respect it. Like I said, Prince was constantly making and releasing albums. But I'll say with Prince's situation, what drove his label crazy when he was at Warner Brothers is that they were like, you're not letting us run the product the way it needs to run. They were pissed that he kind of cut short the Purple Rain era to push the next album. That was driving them crazy. Can you slow down? Because he's just dropping album after album after album and Around the World and Today and all these other projects. It was driving the label crazy because they're like, we need you to, you're oversaturating. Yes, we're going to put it out, but we need to have the albums make their run. The people got to sit with the air before it goes to the next. And also because Prince to me was not a pop artist. I mean, he crossed over into pop, but he delved into everything. He's somewhat of an anomaly in this conversation, right? Because he wasn't the traditional pop star. And a lot of times when I'm talking about that pop model machine, I'm really speaking about the MTV era onwards. Now he technically is that, but yeah, because even when you look at there's some projects that the label wouldn't let him put out, Sign of the Times was supposed to be a 3-disc album. Label's like, no, too much music, cut it down to 2. You're doing too much, right? Yeah, he has a lot of music. And then unfortunately, when he went independent, he started, dropping, but the machine is no longer behind him. So his diehard fans are still supporting him, and it clearly worked because he was always able to still tour and do everything else. But as far as pop audiences, you see the drastic slowdown in the 90s or the mid 90s, right? He gets a hit here and there, and then you don't really see the major comeback until Musicology. And by then he had gone major again. But he was smart. He owned his publishing. So he's like, all right. Let's see. Somebody said Britney and Christina had their childhood in a chokehold. Yeah, listen, they had amazing marketing teams. Amazing marketing. Like those were moments, right? Those were a moment. Let's see. Fish cakes, calling them big backs when she was all about body positivity. Oh yeah, okay, so that's in reference to the lawsuit and the allegations. And again, once allegations come out, whether you did it or not, people, it's hard to move past that, right? And like I said, especially if you are not a white man, it's a different kind of move. Folks just move different, right? Looking like, I'm not gonna use that example. I'm gonna leave it alone. I don't even want to open that box tonight. Plus, I need to get to the other story. I'm gonna keep moving. Let's see. Okay, y'all saying, yep, come on over. Tony Braxton isn't underrated and should have been a single. Somebody said, yes, come on over. See, I know what I be talking about. Somebody said white artists go country when they fall off. They either go country or they try to go R&B and they have the era where they want to be soulful. Like I said this on one of my R&B is Dead episodes when I still did the series, where a lot of times when pop artists wanted to finally be respected by critics, they'd always do an album outside of the pop genre. So like, remember Justin Bieber was so pressed to go R&B, and then he got mad because the Grammys would not nominate him in the R&B categories. All of that is on purpose. Like, it's like the idea of, no, I'm a real artist now. I make soulful music, R&B. Like, so some go R&B, and like you're saying, some go folk. So they go in all these different directions. Miley, after she did her bangers, she went real folk, and she was like, yeah, that's just, as an artist, the music that I make, it's just, that was a phase I was going through, and now I'm an artist and I play guitar and I sit in the field with the dandelions with no shoes because I'm an artist. Like, everybody goes through it, and then they always come right back to whatever else, right? Let's see. Somebody said R&B. What is Lizzo's most R&B song? See, if there's an R&B song that I would consider for Lizzo, it might have been the Special song. To me, just all her music to me was pop, but it has R&B influence, and it's fine. Like, I think Black women can exist as pop artists that don't have to be R&B. It's totally fine. I just think the problem is the industry has just never accepted it, and that's why when there are some, they're always an anomaly. So that's what I think on that. Yes, I went to Afram on Sunday. It's not old folks' day. Somebody said Madonna is one that showed down, but she still got her strong base, or slowed down, but she still has a strong base. Yeah, Madonna, again, consistency. The 80s, she had some really, really massive albums. Whether the debut was really, really huge. I think they did about 10 million. Like a Virgin did like 30 million. True Blue sold, I think, something close to that. Like a Prayer was like a Prayer was the slowdown, and that still sold like 15 million copies. Like, Madonna was racking them up in the 80s. 90s is somewhat of a slowdown. Like Erotica, I think, did about 2 million in the US. Bedtime Stories did about the same. Then Ray of Light is a bigger album. It's kind of like the comeback. Music does pretty good. She has American Life, which doesn't do good, but then she makes the comeback with Confessions of a Dance Hall. So she's kind of had a good run. So yeah, you have those who are able to keep going. And again, with all that, because she also, to me, her introduction that to me was through dance music, and dance music that was heavily R&B oriented, like especially with the first two, especially like working with Nile Rodgers on the Like a Virgin album and stuff like that. There was like an underground club following that she had that grew as she transitioned and blew up into the bigger pop artists. Like, her big break song would have been like the Borderline song. But so she has an interesting journey. All right, we gotta keep it moving. Somebody said Lizzo was making music back then. She too was making music for 15 years before she blew up. But yeah, I saw that because I was Googling like her chart trajectory because I thought her first album was in like 2017. And I saw that she had like 3 other ones before that. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. But it is what it is. We'll see what happens. Speaking of Money Long, I saw, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying at the beginning of the live, where it's like, you just don't really know what life brings you, so you really got to live in the moment. But I had no idea, and I guess none of us did. But she just talked about having a double lung transplant. She was recently on the Brand Name Monica tour, or the Boys Mind tour, in the fall of 2025, and there were some nights where she would pull out, and then eventually she left the tour, and Maya had replaced her, and none of us really knew what was going on. She just said there was some health issues, but had no idea it was because of the lungs. Now we know that she has lupus. And she talked about how, she took a break from the tour. She ended up getting pneumonia. And then when she got better, she still didn't feel right. And she went and, got checked out. And they were like, you need a lung transplant or you won't be here in the next week. And so she had to get a double lung transplant, which is crazy. I will say this is why it's important that we do these check-ins, like with our physicians and everything. And that's not to a fault of hers. I'm just saying how things can change so quickly. Like sometimes we think we're fine and then boom, surprise, just life happens. And that's why I'm always like, live your life to the fullest, but also take care of yourself because she's young. She's only 37, right? 37. And she's had a double lung transplant. That in itself is a lot. She also said she ended up having to get vocal surgery as well as a result of the surgery with the lungs. I'm glad that she's well, and I hope that things work out for her, but that is intense. And I'm only saying because my father was on the list for the lung transplant, but he died before he got his. Yeah. And fortunately, she was fortunate that they had some for her already, ready to go, right? She didn't have to get on a long list, but that is scary. Because what if she just thought, I'm just, let me just take some aspirin, let me take some NyQuil and go to sleep and never addressed it, right? There's been so many people who thought it was just something small and they let it bypass and they don't wake up the next day, right? And so that is a lot. But like I said, I'm glad that she is good. But yeah, it just goes to show anything can happen. I think sometimes people think that, you got until your 60s before you got to start worrying about your health. Like, oh no, it's listen, take care of yourself. And to be fair with her situation, because she has an autoimmune disease, everything is amplified. It makes things just worse for her. And so things that may not be as bad for us are more intense for somebody who has her condition. So hopefully things continue to work out for her. And again, this is why I believe in science. And I think it's stupid that we have a government that's cutting research on these things that matter because these are things that affect us and everybody else. But, good luck to her. Mitch McConnell, we think he's still alive. But in the event that he is not, when I have to address what I need to address when that time comes, I do not want the performative theatrics and respectability politics to anything that I have to say when his time comes. And I'm going to leave it at that because I already know what's coming. Yeah, I'll save my Mitch McConnell commentary for if that day comes. The last thing I'll close on, I don't pay too much attention to a lot of these lists that come out because they're always kind of silly. But I did see that Rolling Stone had the list of greatest R&B groups, so I'm going to close on that just to have a close on a happy. Well, I don't know if this is a happy list, but we'll see. All right, so let's pull up this list here. Now, again, this was 50 greatest R&B groups of all time. Wait, where's my list at? This is not what I clicked. This is not what I clicked. Hold on a second. Let me make sure I get this right. See, now when I hit the articles, they don't want to give me what I'm looking for. I don't need a summary. I want what I clicked on. Thank you very much. All right, here we go. All right, so 50 was the Drifters. 49 was the Bar-Kays. 48 was Martha and the Vandellas. 47, the Dramatics. I feel like they just said, let's just get all the folks from the 60s and put them in the back real quick. 46 was The Time. Okay, well, that's 80s. 45 was Atlantic Star. 44 is The Barge. 43 is War. 42 is The Whispers. 41 is The Stylistics. And 40 is The Dells. Okay. Let's go to the 30s. 39 is The Impressions. 38 is the SOS Band. 37 was Zap. 36, Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. They had one of my favorite performances. I hope that we can be together soon on Soul Train. Cameo was 35. The Shy Lights, 34. The Delphonics, 33. The Spinners, 32. That's another one of my favorites too. The Gap Band, 31. Commodores at 30. In Vogue at 29. Tony at 28. Jodeci at 27. Kool and the Gang, 26. Staple Singers are at 25. Mind you, this is Billboard or Rolling Stone, one or two, I forgot. 24 is Chic. 23 is the Pointer Sisters. Sam and Dave at 22. Hold on, I'm coming. Guy at 21. SWV at 20. I don't need to click an ad, man. Just give me to my point. Hold on, it's taking me to an ad. So annoying. Now I see what y'all be going through when y'all watch my videos. All right. Number 20 is SWV. 19, Gladys Knight and the Pips. 18, the Four Tops. 17, the Miracles. 16, Rufus. 15, Sade. 14, Maids and Frankie Beverly. 13, the Ohio Players. 12, the OJs. 11, TLC. 10, Destiny's Child. Oh, I know them fan bases were fighting. 9, Boyz II Men. 8, New Edition. 7, Jackson 5. 6, Parliament and Funkadelic. 5, the Supremes. 4, the Ozzy Brothers. 3, Sly and the Family Stone. 2, the Temptations. Number 1, Earth, Wind, and Fire. All right, I want to read this chat and see what you all think. It's an interesting setup. I feel like sometimes these lists have a recency bias, where a lot of times acts from before the modern time normally just kind of get pushed to the back of the list every time. Because it is very noticeable that the bulk of the top 30 are all within the last like 30 years. But you know, that's just a thought. Maybe like 40 years. Let's see. Let's see where we're at. Somebody said, question, Calvin, not counting Confessions by Usher or Emancipation Mimi, what do you think is a classic 2000s album? Teacher Moses, Complex Simplicity, Life Jennings, his debut album. Tamia's Between Friends. Tony Braxton, Libra. Oh, there's some good. Oh, wait, there's a lot of classics. I'm trying to literally think of. Hell, let me just go to what I let's see. Let's see what a lot of my most played stuff is out of the 2000s as of late. I'm gonna say Writings on the Wall. Well, actually, that's 99. 702 Star album was really, really good. I'm just scrolling through who I got here. Anthony Hamilton's The Point of It All album was a really, really good one. Alicia Keys' Diary of Alicia Keys was a good one. A. Marie's All I Have album. Trying to stick with the early 2000s here. Aretha Franklin's So Damn Happy is really, really good. Damn, Mary J. Blige's Mary album is 99 because that's one of my favorites. But I guess you can say Mary's the breakthrough. What else? I'm trying to think here. Classic R&B albums. I'm trying to scroll through my artists that I listen to here. For me, it's always been Brandy's Aphrodisiac. I love that one, but I never say never is my favorite Brandy album. What else? I'm doing this while y'all do that. It gives me some time. Oh, Shantae Moore's Love the Woman album, or Loving the Woman was a real. Wait, no, is it Love the Woman? It's the album that has It Ain't Supposed to Be This Way. It wasn't a big commercial success, but it was to me that's her best album. Or it's right up there with A Love Supreme. They're kind of together in there. Oh, it's Love the Woman. That's the name of the album, Love the Woman. It's classics from the 2000s. I'll throw some people gonna side at me, but I would say Trey Songz, his third album. It was that one's Ready. That's the one with Your Side of the Bed and Say Ah and Neighbors Know My Name and Jupiter Lover. As much as he gets on my nerves, that was a very nice album. Let's see. The Electric Red album that came out in 09 was a really good album. Erykah Badu's Worldwide Underground, Jill Scott's, actually all of Jill Scott's albums, but who is Jill Scott? Words and Sounds, Volume 1. I mean, those are some classics. I could keep going. I don't want to hold the question hostage here, but let me keep going. Trying to think of who else. I'm skipping so many people. Oh, I said this before. Earth, Wind, and Fire's Illumination album from 05 is really, really good. Let me see. Scrolling. Oh, Jasmine Sullivan's Love Me Back is 2010, but I'm gonna pretend it came out in 09 just to be in this argument. What else? Oh, John Legend's Get Lifted was a good one. That was a really good one. Khalees Tasty was a very nice album. Kelly Rowland's Miss Kelly album was really nice. Even though my favorite Kelly album is Talking Good Game. Kenny Lattimore and Shantae Moore's Things That Lovers Do was a nice album. It's an album full of covers, but it's still really nice. Keisha Cole's debut was a good one. I'm skipping so many people, man. Yeah, there's lots of classics that came out in the 2000s. All right, I'm gonna, for the sake of time, I'm gonna move on because I'll be here all day scrolling through my artists to figure out who am I missing. I'm probably missing a lot of folks, so forgive me if I didn't say somebody you wanted to hear. Okay. I said Love Madonna in the 80s, but Jodie Watley had great albums as well. I totally agree. Jodie, to me, is interesting where she falls in the conversation because I think she's left out of a lot of them. Like, one, she had this booming career with Shalimar, and then she also had a booming career solo. Yeah, she has some good ones. Somebody said they don't agree with the time being that low. All right. The time has some good ones too. They have a lot of good ones. I don't think I heard the Isley Brothers, Menal 1009. I don't think they were on the list. I don't think I heard the Isley Brothers. Yeah, you know, they all, you know, when they make these lists, there's somebody that always gets left off every time. And like I said, the good thing about Lizzo, she knows how to make a hit song. She can always come back with a hit. And because she's also talented, you know, when you have talent, there's always ways to stay in the business, right? So we'll see what happens. Oh, Destiny Fulfilled is, I throw that as a classic. Like I said, Writings on the Wall is one of my favorites, but it's from 99. So somebody said I'm fine with Earth, Wind, and Fire. I'm fine with them being number one too. Was Isley Brothers on the, were they number two? Isley Brothers, who was number two? No. Maybe, oh, Isley Brothers was number 4, so they were on the list. Okay. Let's see. I don't think Escape was on the list or Mint Condition, unfortunately. Joe, My Name is Joe. That's a good one. But I loved Love Scene more. That's why. So Calvin, I don't know if you mentioned this already on another live, but did you see Earth, Wind, and Fire? Yeah, so I talked about the Earth, Wind, and Fire doc on the last live, but I did enjoy the watch. So yes. Somebody said, "This Is My Time." Raven Simone was one they liked. Floetry's album. Floetry had a night. That was a fun album. My favorite song in there was Fun. You know, This Is My Idea of Fun. I used to love that song. Not y'all talking about Luma D. Oh, Tweet, Southern Hummingbird. Now that's a classic there. and It's Me Again. Both of those are classics. Somebody said Beyonce B-Day. That was a fun one. If I'm looking between the first and the second, I think I did like B-Day more than Dangerously in Love, just because it was like a party album. But Dangerously in Love has like 3 of my favorite Beyonce songs, like Me, Myself, and I, Signs, and Yes. And the fact that they're and Rather Be With You. And that whole Rather Be With You, the Speechless run, gets me every time. But I liked B-Day because it was fun when it came out. Right? Let's see. Oh, Jamie Foxx Unpredictable. That's a good one. I used to love Seduction. And not Seduction, that's Usher. I'm sorry. VIP. Everybody in my party's VIP. Yeah, Joe's the Love Scene. That album there, boy. Man, well, that's 90s, but still. Okay. Yeah, those are my topics. I'll just hang in the chat for a few minutes before I wind down here. Can we get a watch party for when is that versus? Who? Because they got a versus with B2K and Pretty Ricky. When is that? Let's see. What versus. You know, I didn't even know versus was still a thing. They just keep popping up apparently. Thursday, June 25th. What's today? Oh, wait. Oh, that's like to. Shit, I got something to do. But you hiccup. Sorry, you guys have fun. Do they have 20 songs? Pretty Ricky and B2K? Versus is 20 songs each, right? B2K. Got to Be. Why I Love You. Bump, Bump, Bump. Girlfriend. What else did they have? Wait a minute. Hold on. Okay. Pretty Ricky. The Grind on Me. Wait. Do they have 20 hits? I mean, they're gonna have to do a lot of deep cuts. Pretty Ricky. Why don't I didn't listen to them like that. Let me see. They had the song that sampled the Isley Brothers. I remember that one. The Hotline or whatever. Let's see here. I got to see what they Thrive in the morning. All right. Let's see. Let me go back to the first album. What was on that first album? Your Body. Oh, yeah. I remember that. Nothing But a Number. I forgot about that song. Okay. I do remember Juicy. That wasn't a single, though. Which they don't have to do singles just for the show. Yeah, that's all I remember from that. The second album, Late Night Special. What was on that one? I really wasn't listening to them like that. They were cool for what it was, but I didn't play them like that. All right, same thing with B2K. I told y'all before I was a hater when B2K came out, but I do remember their era very vividly. Yeah, that'll be in it. Y'all let me know how it goes, and if they got to perform it and sing, I'm really good on that. But yeah. Oh yeah, and the closer I get to you with Beyonce and Luther. All right, you know what? Dangerously in Love might take the cake for B-Day. I don't know, because B-Day, my favorite Beyonce song, period, has been Sugar Mama for a long time. So that's what be giving B-Day the edge to me. Sugar Mama and then having the green light and Freaking Dress was fun. And Get Me Bodied, I was in love with when it came out because nothing sounded like it. Deja Vu was fun. Damn, yeah. Them two this is what I mean when I say artistry. When you got albums that are so different but both very good. Yeah. The Pointer Sisters were on the list. Monica's After the Storm. I'd throw that in there. Monica did a big one on that one. Exactly. Newport, Winston, Salem, Marble Lights. Come on, smoking cigarettes. I don't smoke, but that was my song. Smoking on you, got me puffing about a pack a night. Like saying, Calvin talk about the book club. I did. I'm gonna put the selections out on Friday. We'll announce the winner of the selections that Tuesday or Wednesday, and then the book club starts on July 13th. Yeah, B2K was cool, but out of like the those boy bands, I actually liked Immature more. Maybe, but and mind you, B2K is really my area. Immature, I was a little bit younger, but Immature had really nice songs. Like I love the I Don't Mind song. Like that song should have been a bigger hit. Like that was a really, really good one. And like We Got It and Watch Me Do My Thing and I'll Never Lie Again and Stay the Night. Like they had some fun songs. They were fun. I liked them, but all right. Somebody said, I don't know a single B2K song. Like, the song I liked was the Why I Love You. That was one I did like. You know, baby, that's the reason why I love you. I like that. You're my heart. Remember they used to do that the video? Girl, I used to love that. Calvin, did you see what Ted Lieu implied today about Trump having a terminal disease? I did not, but hurry up. Let's see. Somebody said the Emancipation of Mimi. I would have said the Emancipation of Mimi, but because Order of the Beast said, aside from Emancipation of Mimi and Confessions, what other ones? Otherwise, those would have been one, especially Emancipation. I would have quickly said that. Let's see. Yeah, Me, Myself, and I is a good one. I love that song. Yeah, I wasn't even trying to be shady, but I was like, I don't know if I know 20 Pretty Ricky songs and 20 B2K songs. I know probably more B2K's music, but even then, it's still like under 10 songs. I said, how the F does Calvin remember all this? Calvin is going to be one of those elders that pass down stories. I don't know, but I will tell you this. I feel like I remember details so much better from like childhood and teenage years than I do in my adult years. My adult years are all one big blur. All of it's a blur. Like if I were to ever try to be a music historian after 2005, that's when I fall off the wagon. It starts to blur up a little bit. But everything from before then, whether it's like historic, well, okay, I take that back. In pop culture, yes, up to about 05 is probably my bailiwick, like 80s through 05. History and all the other stuff is any era, but yeah, I think some of it just has to do with being in a small town and not having a lot of places to go. So you watch a lot of TV, lots of TRL, lots of VH1, lots of 106 in Park, lots of documentaries and stuff like that. And you just kind of remember everything. And then I guess also living in Europe for those 3 years and not having access to BET and MTV and stuff like that. You as soon as you get back to the States, it's like you yearn to have that, or at least I did back then. And so I remember I kept saying those last few months in Italy, I was like, oh, when I get back to America, I'm going to watch MTV. I'm going to watch MTV. I can't wait to watch some music videos. But you just kind of, I don't know. I felt like I was really behind in music, and I wanted to know everything. So I think I maybe intentionally became very attentive to what was happening musically when I got back to America in 99. So I said, all I ask is, Omarion, don't bring your brother or watermelons out again like the last verses with Mario. See, and then Omarion already did the solo one, and I swear he probably mixes B2K songs in his. So it's yeah, and then watermelon. That I'm not gonna say what I want to say, but that was making up for something else that wasn't happening on that stage. What up, Ms. Williams? Let's see. Somebody said, well, music is your life. It's not that hard. Some people are chronically musical while others are chronically online. That's the thing. Yeah. Drew Hill Live is incredible. Those old men can still bring it. Yeah, they were doing their singing out there. You know, they like to holler and hoot. Y'all better hoot and holler. It's just, all of them got a mic just going at it. And what was funny, you know, when they did a little tell me what you... It's different when they get older, right? The knees ain't the same. They weren't jumping as high. They were barely getting off the ground. I was like, they were looking like Marsha Brady in the Brady Bunch movie. Remember when Marsha was doing that dance with the thumbs? I was like, all right, okay. It's the same thing like when Janet be on tour and she does Together Again and she wants the crowd to jump. I was like, Janet, now your fan base is getting older. Now we all could jump, and everybody could jump in '98 when Together Again came out because everybody was in their 20s, so everybody could jump high, right? Now you got people in the audience that are in their 60s and stuff. And you talk about jump, and folks just had a knee replacement. They can't. The doctor told them they're supposed to sit down. Like, I saw the clip of Janet in Tokyo yelling at the people, "Get up!" Like they can't. They're older, right? People in that crowd got gout, arthritis, hip replacement, knee replacement, toe amputated because of diabetes. They all can't be jumping no more. They got orthopedic shoes and stuff. You got that one person who got one leg that's longer than they all can't jump no more for together again, right? You just got to just do this. We just have to go back and raise the roof, all right? Somebody said, "Did I hear about Janet's tour in Japan?" Yeah, that's what I was referencing. It was some clip she had out there. She was telling the people to jump, and then folks was like, Rolly said, "I know we don't go up for him these days, but R. Kelly's Chocolate Factory. Musically, yes, it was nice. It's a part of my distant memory." All right. Somebody said just do the raise, just raise the roof and do the Bankhead fountain. Right? I still be my little silly behind. Like when I'm driving or something in the right song, but I still be kind of bouncing with like the bounce should have never died. You just can't mess it up. There's this clip of TLC. I know they're on punishment still, but there's a clip of TLC when they were on Jay Leno, and they were doing "What About Your Friends?" And there's this part where they were doing the second verse and the music had changed, and so the band had to do this little and T-Boz this little bounce that went right back into the rhythm, and she caught. But I was like, "You better go on!" Like T-Boz used to dance down. Like it was the way she caught that rhythm, because anybody who didn't have rhythm would have lost their placement. And T-Boz had this little nasty bounce that she went to and brought it right back in. I said, the bounce was a time. It was a time. Somebody said Mario would have had a great comeback if he just stayed quiet after verses. Folks be exposing themselves a little too much, start saying too much. Yeah, I was like, why are you? And I like Mario. I think Mario's an excellent vocalist. I think he's slept on vocally. He'd be making some weird choices. Somebody said Will Smith getting jiggy with it. I still go up for the Big Willie Style album. Folks were trying to call him corny because it was that. This sounds silly, but that was the first rap album that I learned that I knew all the lyrics of. Well, it's also one of the ones I could actually play in front of my mama, but it was a nice album. It had these nice samples of all these R&B songs. He had the one song, Chasing Forever, that sampled Ribbon in the Sky. He had the song It's All Good that sampled Chic's Good Times. He had lots of samples actually on that album. You had Miami that sampled Whispers, and the beat goes on, and then Getting Jiggy With It, which sampled what song? He's the Greatest Dancer from Chic. Men in Black, Patrice Rushen, Forget Me Nots. Trying to remember what else is on that album. I think he had a song. It sampled Cameo's Candy. I don't remember if it was called Candy. I can't remember. That was a nice album. I liked it. It was fun. It was a good time. Y'all can never make me hate Will Smith, because especially when Wild Wild West dropped the song, I just got back to America. Now, to me, that is Siskel's song. Siskel took that song and ran with it, because Siskel did his singing. Like, that's some singing on there. I did feel like he tried to capture that same magic when he came out with the Millennium song. Remember, it was a similar kind of setup, but instead of Siskel, it was Casey singing, and Casey was doing his singing too, but by then it kind of didn't do as well. But yeah, Will was a good time for me. He has one of my favorite songs out of the early 90s called "A Dog Is a Dog." You ain't nothing but a dog. But it's the music that just makes you go. So yeah. Let's see here. Yeah, Wild Wild West was the time. That was one of the first music videos I saw when I got back to America. Oh, I skipped Lloyd. Who's that? The Kids Pajamas. I still play all of Lloyd's albums like they just came out. What's the two albums? All right, the album that has You and Get It Shorty on it. What is that album? That's a good album, and the follow-up album is really good. Hold on, I gotta pull these two albums up. These were good. Oh, and Sammy. It's not on streaming, but Sammy's second album was really, really good. That's the song that had the "You Should Be My Girl." But he had there was a song on there called "What About Your Friends." There was another one. called I Can't and My Own Way. Like that was a very nice album. But getting back to Lloyd, oh, actually, let me go on to Google. I'm supposed to be on the streaming app. Let's see here. I'm trying to pull up the name of these two albums. So I gotta make sure I get these right. Actually, Lloyd has some good music because I remember when True came out some years back. I was obsessed with that song. Street Love. Okay, that's the album from 06. Yeah, that one had some classics because it had You, Certified, Get It Shorty, Incredible, Valentine. Valentine. I used to like that one. Yeah, that was a good one. And then the follow-up album, was it King of Hearts? No. Lessons in Love. Yeah. That's the one that had Girls Around the World on it. And You're the Lover. Let's make a baby. You know how he sings. I was like, Party All Over Your Body. You know what? I'm gonna have some playlist to listen to after I get my haircut tomorrow. All right, good times. All right, yeah, I forgot about that. Good times. I'll throw Sierra's The Evolution in there too. That was a fun album. It's a bit more pop oriented, but it was fun. Jaheim, I forgot about Jaheim. I always thought his song Just in Case sounded so much like Wifey from Next. I was like, I need to go and look and see who produced those two songs because they both always sounded real similar to me, like as far as production style. All right, can we go to bed, folks? It's been 3 hours and 15 minutes. I need to call it a night. Why didn't Lloyd get his proper shine? He was on the wrong label, right? Like I feel like if Tidra Moses wasn't on TGT, she could have been so much bigger. But yeah, a lot of folks just end up on the wrong labels. Like some of these folks have really great albums and they just be on the wrong label. Did I miss the OJs? The OJs were on the list, but I don't remember. They were further up on the list. They were somewhere in the top 30 because OJs is a favorite of mine too. Because Stairway to Heaven, that's another hooting and hollering song too. Yeah. Before Jaheim went MAGA. All right, I didn't know that. All right, Jaheim. Anyway, it's bedtime for me, folks. Plus, I gotta still do these timestamps while you all get to go to sleep. So yeah, I'll see y'all. I'm doing a little bit of traveling for the next 2 weeks, but you might see me. If you don't, you see me when I get back. But yeah, anyway, so like I said, remember, book club July 13th. I'll put the choices up Friday for you guys to vote on. Get all your votes in by Tuesday, because by Wednesday I'm announcing what book it is, and we're reading by July 13th. All right. Anyway, stay safe, stay sane, mind your business so that you can age well, and I will see you on the next one. Good night, folks.